Welcome back to Caffeine Confessionals. My name is Alan Aguirre, and today we are joined by a guest, hopefully recurring guest of what is a new series. I'm joined by the challenge historian Jacob Hollabaugh.
Almost nailed it. Jacob Hollabaugh. Very, very close.
We
Love
were
it.
we were so close. We were so close. Hopefully that
I've
encapsulates.
mispronounced your name many times while shouting you out on my podcast, so that was more than
Did
deserved.
you say Alan Aguirre?
No, I just can't get roll. Like, I know there's not really a roll with your R's, but I just
No,
I
there
fudged the
is
R's a bit.
there is actually a role, and I don't do
Okay.
it
Yeah, I'm
to
just not
like because
capable. So,
I don't want to scare people. It is Alan. I'm good at.
exactly. See, and I don't want to try to do that because it would be even worse than not trying. So,
Yeah, I get Aguirre for most of my life. But yeah, welcome everyone to the Challenge Retrospective series where we are going to be going back in time a little bit and talking about old challenge seasons, breaking down some of the most iconic moments. And we're going to try and answer like one big question overall. And today we're going to be talking about a season that is now more than 5 years away from happening, 2020, which it's
whoa.
kind of crazy to say out loud because it's recent-ish, but not as recent anymore. That is the challenge Total Madness.
the start of the start of a different era of the show for sure, and I think the start of the era most consensus fans would say like the not good era of the show. There was a pretty clean break from War of the Worlds 2 in this one, I think, is a good dividing point. And I can't believe, yeah, I hadn't actually I've thought through a lot that this aired during COVID in prep for this, but you just saying 5 years ago was like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought through that this was 5 years ago. That is kind of a long time now.
It was a whole different world. Uh, like quite literally and figuratively. The question we're going to try and be answering today is, was the challenge Total Madness a total failure or actually a success? And this is a season that very much divides people because, as you said, this is an era of the challenge that people don't feel as strongly about. Yet you look back to War of the Worlds 2, which was one season before, and when that season actually first aired, I would say people were down on it. There was fatigue about Kara and Polly. A lot of
Yeah.
people thought it wasn't as strong as War of the Worlds 1, and people were upset that a lot of people didn't go into elimination that season, which then, as time has gone on, people love War of the Worlds 2. People say we haven't had a good season since War of the Worlds 2, and some people even rank it top five now. Like that's
Hand
how
up.
much, yeah, that's how
Uh,
much time has
Close to
changed.
five. Close. Not top five, but top 10 for sure. And yes, I am one of the ones that rides very, very hard for War of the Worlds 2. And just for Dirty 30 through War of the Worlds 2 in general being another not golden age because there's a couple golden ages that come before it and there can't be that many golden ages of the show, but a very, very high point of this run of these 5 6 seasons was incredible and peaked with War of the Worlds 1 and 2. And yes, then Total Madness is the start, and we will get into plenty of things about it, but right off the bat is because it's lumped in with everything that comes after it, I think is one good starting point of like, we're going to address this season, both what we maybe felt like in the moment as much as we can remember, and then on retrospective looking back at it. And I really am trying to separate it out because it gets lumped in with the subsequent seasons after it that I don't think are as interesting of questions of were they failures or successes or good. I think we all know the former is the case for I think the next 3 seasons of the show pretty
Yeah.
easily. So I really want to try to focus my attention on not what I think of the season right before, except for the few storylines that carry over, and not anything that comes after. Just this season, trying as much as it may be difficult for all of us to remember March of 2020, what we felt like then during watching this live, and now having revisited it again here in prep for this, how it's viewed differently, not in the context of watching it 1 month, literally like 2 3 weeks into. I live in Chicago. I think Chicago fully shut down like 3-ish weeks before the start of this season. Like we were truly in the beginning of like, do not leave your apartment time when the premiere episode of War of the Worlds hit, or of, excuse me, of Total Madness hit.
Yeah, and so this podcast, we're going to be breaking down our bigger question via 10 important factors and takeaways we have. And let's kind of jump into it. The first most important thing about Total Madness. And this is a disclaimer, just like they put a disclaimer at the beginning of episodes at a certain point of the season. We got to talk about the rise and fall of D Nguyen. Um, you talked about how there were storylines coming in from the previous two seasons. D Nguyen was one of the prospects that came in from War of the Worlds 1. She was from Australia, but she first appeared on a spin-off season of the Jersey Shore from the UK, just a one-season spin-off. She was really cheap and easy to get, which was the kind of the thing with a lot of prospects. They're just taking some random shots in the dark. D gets partnered with Wes, and she has a really good, promising rookie season where she wins, I think, four tribunals, gets pretty far into the game, loses right before the final, shows some fieriness, and MTV likes her so much that the next season, even though the theme is America versus the UK,
I
they
forgot
bring
that.
in her and Turbo as little mercenaries to join like they just wanted her on the
Why
cast.
not? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
like
bring Turbo back. He won. Sure.
they just wanted to shoehorn them in. I mean, and it was good choices on them because they were notable cast members. Uh, Dee is part of Team UK. She immediately begins a showmance with Rogan. She's part of the Cam, Kara, Ninja Alliance, but on Team UK. So she's avoiding elimination the entire game. Uh, there are ideas of like maybe we should toss out Dee before the final because she isn't the strongest. She ends up holding well in the final in part because of her puzzle skills. Um, Performs honestly just pretty well as a whole because she is a strong competitor. And she wins a challenge championship, which is big because it's an era where we don't have a lot of new champions.
And then things go bad
And then things go bad.
ish.
So after War of the Worlds 2, Dee had already proven to be a good competitor on two seasons. She took her training to a completely another level because she comes into Total Madness and she is one of the top competitors. She has the label of champion. She's making all these waves on social media. She's interacting with all these people on Twitter. She's also being a bit unhinged on Twitter. She might be doing some booger sugar. She actually, that's not a mic. She was definitely doing some booger sugar online. Um, Pandemic hits. She's very chronically online. She goes into total madness. She's easily one of the biggest characters on that season, a top competitor, but getting into so much drama. Very much she's gone from this obscure character to now ascended to face the franchise, or one of the faces of the franchise, which that type of rise is very dangerous. Like that
Hmm.
acceleration in like character, like because Cara Maria became one of the faces of the franchise. She built up to it over season after season. Dee's rise was immediate.
Hmm. And because where you said she started from, it wasn't a was a star on another MTV show, another American US like a CBS show or anything where like it was truly she was 100% unknown to the challenge audience and to most American reality TV audiences when she came in on one. So it was even more of a quick ascent with no even like starter pad like over on this other show. Like it was just she was one of the biggest rookies on War of the Worlds 1, one of the main characters in the main plot lines on War of the Worlds 2. And then on this season, she 100%, I think there's two main stories going on. There's a bananas West bananas thing going on, but then there is I think the three main characters of this season are really Dee, Jenny, and Rogan as much as anyone else. And she's front and center of that. So whether they behind the scenes were like this is the new female face of the franchise or not, she very much had quickly risen to she was the face of this season or one of the two or three small handful faces of this season for sure until she was no longer they no longer put her face in the episodes of the season for the latter portion.
Yes, Dee got online, which she was very much doing at this point in time, whether it was Instagram, OnlyFans, Twitter, she was doing everything. She was everywhere. You could not see her face either on screen or online. She gets into it with Bailey and Swaggy C, two characters we'll talk about more later on. Um, and Dee has some poorly worded bad tweets. Like that's
Hmm.
essentially all I'm gonna put it as. Like if you're not aware of it, like they're out there. And this was during a time when we talked about like this was 2020, this was COVID, this was specifically right after some of the George Floyd stuff had happened when the Black Lives Matter thing was so, in the media. And so Dee's tweets were during a time when everyone's at home, when everyone's really checking up on the stuff. And MTV takes the hardline stance of we are banning T Nguyen from the challenge and completely editing her out of the show, which was a drastic move.
Yeah, bold choice, very bold choice. Again, you can look up what she said and everything else, and certainly uh, don't condone and not a fan of any of that happened. But to make the leap from this character said some really insensitive stuff or things we've deemed very insensitive or inappropriate online to it was a little more than halfway through the season completely re-editing your show to be remove one of the main characters is very, very drastic. That is definitely the strong word. In another instance, in kind of a long line of the challenge, like many reality TV shows, but I think the challenge has as big a history of this as any of the shows, having to make these decisions on either actions cast members do in the game and in the house or outside of it, and how to react to them, how to respond to them, what to do, what consequences to have. And not that there is a rule like that you could have clear cut obvious rules to always just apply, well, like is it above the line, below the line, whatever, but they've never had anywhere near kind of like clear rules and regulations or operating system of like this is what we do in this genre of situation, if you will. And so it was pretty shocking when it happened that when it was determined that like, oh wait, they're like editing her out. I also remember that for at least one, if not 2 weeks, the folks in Canada were still getting the original version without de-edited out. So that also became like a thing of like, can you find a link to see the quote unquote like full real episode? But yeah, it was very bold of them to do. It definitely is, showed their support for being against the things that were said. I mean, there is no bigger show of support than like we'll knowingly tank our own season of the show when we have a lot of eyeballs on us right now, as we'll talk about soon here with like code this airing during COVID. So big decision by them, but definitely affected the season in a major way because as we said she was one of I think the three big main characters. Their storyline of those three together, they were kind of running the game. She was in tribunal, she was in multiple eliminations after she had been edited out, one of which they successfully edited her. She won and she was almost not shown on screen while showing the elimination she won, the hall brawl versus Jenny. A little harder to actually like not visibly show her on the screen, but they only showed her to get blown up by Jenny, so they probably liked that part. But yeah, pretty wild to remember back what that felt like in the moment. And on rewatch, it is very jarring when you go from the episode where, like, the episode to where they made that decision, like, oh, suddenly this seems very disjointed. This seems like there's a big hole missing.
Yeah, and this is some inside baseball. Like MTV would send me the episodes in advance to review early. During those weeks after D got banned from the show, people from MTV were like, "Yeah, look, we don't have the episode ready yet because it's not done edited. We might get it to you like Wednesday, like an hour before the show even airs, because that's how to the wire they were." And we had actual. This was in the era of 90-minute episodes. Two episodes were just straight up cut to 60 minutes.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah, I forgot about that.
because of the whole D stuff. And one of the episodes in which D did not appear in, or the immediate episode after she got banned, was the episode where she broke a confessional record. She had 26 confessionals in the episode. She got into it with Bailey during a daily challenge. She cursed out Josh and made him cry. She hooked up with Rogan in the shower. Rogan later then voted her into the elimination with Maddie, where she completely dominated Maddie. And this is just one episode of D, and this is how much of a main character she was. Because, I mean, as we talked about earlier, she was Wes's protege, so she's Wes's ally. Meanwhile, she has a beef going on with Bananas. She has the up and down thing with Rogan. At the beginning of the season, she's going at Jen Lee. D had relationships with so many different people on this cast. We also talked about Jenny. At the beginning of the game, she's number one allies with Jenny, which pisses off Tori and Jordan. So there's some Tori Jordan D drama. She's allies with Jenny, and then she turns on Jenny, then Jenny turns on her. It's just a kerfuffle. Her game is so all over the place. Like I know you mentioned Jenny and Rogan as other main characters. I don't even think they're close to being. I don't even think Bananas. I think Bananas is the only one I would say was close to D in terms of main characterhood on this season. And like Jenny and Rogan probably were more so because of how much she got edited out at the end. But this was the whole D show.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's mostly, I lumped those three together because most of D, everything she was doing was like playing off of one of those two. So they were a part of the D story or the, the secondary, the supporting actor and actress, if you will, of the D story of the season. And then, yes, they were also, though, two people who I always look back at as, you know, they lost a lot because of D being edited out, those late episodes where they otherwise would have been still those supporting characters to the main storyline. They're removed a little more. And I, especially on Jenny's behalf, like when, on season 40 going into it, people were kind of like, oh, Jenny's like another kind of case. Like she kind of got the same accusations Casey would get of like great athlete, but kind of boring wallpaper. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like she was like awesome character on Total Madness where she dominated, ends up winning, and we didn't see whole bunch of that because it was playing off of the person who was edited out of the last 5 episodes or whatever it ended up being. So yeah, but you're totally correct. I mean, the whatever the original versions of the episodes were, D is far and away probably the MVP of this season, and you only would even make a case for Bananas just because he won his seventh and him and Wes, and it's like would be fun to talk about on a podcast, but the case doesn't really hold up. D would be the MVP of the season.
And I was rewatching the season for this podcast. I was really into it for those first 7, 8 episodes. I was like, these are some pretty good. This is some
It's
pretty good
good.
challenge. Yeah, it's some pretty good challenge going on. It actually has a lot of the same vibes of War of the Worlds 2 and War of the Worlds 1. It feels like a continuation of those. Um, but then after D gets banned, the season just falls off a cliff. But it's also not. It's not also totally because of D. I think it would have gotten a little bit more boring in certain parts in certain episodes. But she was such a main character that she could have stirred the stick and kept it like a pretty strong season as a whole.
Yeah, and I mean, just to go back to that, you gave the full outline of like what happened in the first episode that they edited her out of was like an all-time performance of an episode from her that, that changes one of the 5 episodes from kind of a little bit more of a slog to like potentially an all-time episode in, a real high point for the season. So yeah, it definitely, you know, um, I wish she could have been a little less online and had some better opinions and things. So this would have never had to happen. But I also kind of wish that we could just see it would be really great if we could just see the D cut, if you will, or whatever you want to call the unedited version of the season, because I do think it would, and we're going to talk a lot about watching it now versus then, in a lot of other ways. But I do think if we could watch that version of it, it would change the opinion of the season pretty strongly for folks on rewatch.
Yeah, Dee's a cautionary tale, man. As much as I wish she didn't get banned, she really did have such an inflated sense of self after her win, and the way she was online, she felt indestructible, and she showed, one tweet could really just end it all.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was chaotic, and I do want to know, even online, like I have not told many people about this. Well, maybe I've told some people about this. Dee literally paid me money to create content promoting the Patreon that she and Wes were doing at the time. And so I published a whole blog that was sponsored by them. I did an interview that was sponsored by them. And that was my cautionary tale personally of like, you know what? I cannot be too much of friends with people from the challenge anymore because one, you know, paid sponsored journalism, not the greatest, but two, they might get canceled one day, and you just don't know who you're talking to. You just don't know who
Yeah.
who you're talking to at certain points.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's one thing if it's maybe if it's yeah, someone like Wes where it's like we have a long enough history here that like you can feel a little more comfortable with like knowing what the possibilities of the future are because you have a long enough track record. Although I do think, are you and him on good terms these days? Do I remember some he got upset about something recently of yours? I remember watching that back and forth. It was like, oh, come
Well,
on, Wes, calm the fuck, like calm down, man.
Wes got mad because I said that Danny Jameson
Yeah.
that I personally believe that he took PEDs at a certain point. And
Yes.
then Wes is like, I've been accused so many times, and it's defamation and stuff like that. And
That's what it was. Oh yeah.
and then thousands of people are arguing about what is actually defamation, what is a tweet, what is. whatever. Um,
Oh, how culturally relevant that is now, this very day that we record. But,
yeah.
that's not a topic for this podcast.
And I never accused Wes myself, and I actually will never accuse Wes, because I simply don't believe he ever has. But that's a whole other thing. I like Wes. I like Wes. Him and I, like, we did an interview. We talked. He talked on the phone for 3 hours, and then had to just transcribe it via text. Um,
Love that. Love that. Yeah. Wes and I obviously don't know him at all, but from a fan standpoint, my introduction into this entire world and like where I always say everyone that watched the real world kind of has like their real world seasons, like depending your age. And Key West and Austin, that run was my like I was the exact right age to be 4 or 5 years younger than them, where I was like, oh, I want to like I have crushes on all the women in the house. I want to be all the guys in the house. And like Wes was one of the ones just from the beginning. I was always like, even when he was, a very different person in his early years or whatever, I was still always like the Austin cast, and the Austin season always held a special place to me. So I've been a long term Weston Bergman guy myself.
he's my all-time favorite challenger.
Oh,
So
nice.
so I just love the way he plays the game in terms for entertainment factors.
For sure. We will discuss him, I'm sure, coming up shortly.
Yeah, and he also took a hard light stance. He kicked Dee literally out of his guest house. So on top of her being
Oh
banned, he
yeah,
kicked her out because she was living with him in the
they were
United
doing
States.
yeah, I remember all the
Yep,
different stuff they were doing. Oh yeah. Wow.
yep.
Good job by him.
Uh, so good job by him. He kicked her out. She was living with him because it was the pandemic, which translates us to our number two factor of the season is that this season literally debuted within the first few weeks of the pandemic when we had no sports to watch. Like there was no live sports. People were going crazy. People were betting on virtual horse races. Like people were craving and missing sports. And so the challenge having this season in its vault ready to air was the perfect opportunity. They debuted and the challenge broke 1 million viewers for the first time it had. Well, actually, it did during World of Worlds 1, but it was consistently around 1 million viewers, which was a big deal.
hmm And yeah, I was just double checking the dates. So, I always reference, as many do, the day the NBA shut down is kind of like the quote unquote start of COVID lockdowns and different things. That was March 11th. The season of Total Madness debuted on April 1st. So 3 weeks later after that. And I remember going into this season, we had those 3 weeks. We'd again started be locked in our homes, everything else, and thinking to myself, like there is no content out there. It's not only no sports, but like it was entering the spring summer where like TV and movies, it's a little bit of a dry spell too. So there wasn't even like any big thing coming out. And I texted so many of my friends that always thought it was like funny that I was so obsessed with the challenge or whatever and would never watch it or anything else, that were then dying for something to watch while they were in their homes, especially if it was sports adjacent, and being like, this is the challenge's moment. All of these eyeballs, like this could blow up in a big way. If this season is anywhere near as good as War of the Worlds 1 or War of the Worlds 2, it is going to get not just to the million mark, but like up to the 2, 3 million mark. Like I thought they could quadruple their viewership, get some Survivor numbers up in there, CBS numbers up in there. Just if this season's good, if the start of it's good, and yes, the start of the season is good, but the cruel irony of the theme of the season obviously did not fit what people were looking for on April 1st, 2020.
Yes, they were living in a underground bunker, in cots, no sunlight, and they were also in the Czech Republic too. So
Yes.
it's a cold weather country in a bunker, super duper depressing environment. The players are going crazy. I remember I tweeted like, "This house sucks," and when you have a house like this that sucks, OGs are never gonna come back to the show. Um, because I'm like, I can't imagine like Coral was ever watching this season and thinking like, "Yeah, I'll come back to live in this type of house."
Yeah, absolutely never. And the idea that even going the step further, like it's called Total Madness, and the entire point, the theme of it is, can we mentally isolate these people and drive them crazy? In the way that it just mirrored what then all of us were living in the real world, once this, actually airs 6 months or whatever it is after they film, is just was just I mean it's just the most cruel irony I've like seen in just like a television or a sport or anything of that nature in the pop culture world of just how the dominoes fell for this to be the case.
Okay, let's say the world is in a better place. Like, let's say this is summer 2006, 2 years before the housing bubble burst. Let's say this is before people know things are gonna get real bad.
Mhm.
And we're in a tropical country, or like the world's good. Would the bunker season be okay in that circumstances? Would that be a little bit better? Or are you like, it's a question. Is the bunker a bad idea regardless? 'Cause I have my own take on it, but do you think the bunker idea is a bad idea regardless?
This was one of my biggest takeaways in rewatching it and trying to like think of like just rewatching it now without those circumstances. I think the theme works okay on rewatch outside of living through COVID while watching it. And certainly compared to the seasons that come after it and all the spy bullshit, it works way, way better than that. But if it was a warm weather season and it's a bunker and it was still the whole idea of like isolate them, drive them mentally crazy, fantastic. I think it like full blown works across the board. I am always anti cold weather season. The challenge is meant to have people in bathing suits by pools being silly. So I'm always in favor of that. I think there's only been one cold weather season where the cold weather actually helped in any single way. But yeah, the theme on rewatch, I was like, the theme isn't like I get how they talk themselves into that in a like this is a good idea, this is a new interesting thing we can do. Totally get it, totally think it actually like mostly works. It's just the situation of it made it go from like maybe it's an average or slightly above average theme to this is the worst thing we could have ever done right now.
My take is I'm just completely against the bunker. And
Okay,
like, and here's the
which is
reason why.
deserved. The house matters in the challenge and it's the worst house they've ever had.
And like I think that the current challenge houses, even in the tropical locations, are not nice enough. I think we got to have
No.
nice, even nicer houses. Do you ever watch Too Hot to Handle?
I watched the first two seasons, yes.
I watched the first two seasons too. I watched the first season, like, oh, that's kind of cute and funny that they can't hook up. And the second season, I was like, you know what I really like watching reality TV for? For watching hot people hook up. And I'm
Hmm.
like, I watch the challenge because it's like I want to be on the challenge. I want to party with them. I want it to be look sick. And I see the bunker. I'm like, I don't want to be there. I don't like. There's no part of me that wants to be there with them.
Yeah, and one of the moment that like really stood out on the rewatch is in the premiere when they, run into the bunker and they all realize they're living in a bunker and everything. The only one that is actually really excited is Jordan. Jordan is the first one to find the room at the end where they at least have the big workout area and the above ground pool and the open air kitchen or the open kitchen, not open air. It's obviously still in the bunker. And he gets all excited because it's like his little fantasy, place to be locked in and just work out and eat or whatever. But then everyone else comes and has to like act and feign excitement of like, oh, never mind, we got all this. Like, look how good this is. And it's like, no, this is far and away the worst. Maybe the second worst. Respect to the challenge USA won might be the worst living situations, and ruined our chance to have some awesome people back on the show.
Yeah.
But probably one of, if not the worst houses they could have been in. And yes, I agree. I want to see people hooking up. I want to see it again, warm weather, bikinis out by the pool. I want for that the house time for the challenges for everything. And yeah, the house matters. The house can be a big character of the show. It can really influence what happens and the conversations and the eavesdropping and everything else. And this one was really, really awful.
Not great, but it didn't stop, I think, a lot of viewers, at least early on. We did
No,
have, I mean, you had The Ringer, you had Barstool, you had SB Nation, you had all these websites reinvesting into challenge
dying for
coverage.
content,
Yeah,
dying for something to talk about.
and they kept it up until Double Agents, and that was actually like we're not gonna ever re-review Double Agents on this podcast unless it's like
No.
we're talking about maybe the worst season in challenge history. Like
Yeah, if we do
I
38 of these, maybe it'll be the 38th one. But yeah.
yeah, it's there's just no world, but the challenge really did fall off, especially after the whole D thing as well, because it's just the show wasn't as strong. And if she stayed on, then I think the season would have ended a lot stronger. But for those first 5, 7 weeks, like people were very hyped, people were very invested. I will note as well, Survivor Winners at War, the tail end of it was airing at the same time as the challenge at the beginning. And then at the end,
Oh.
yeah, because I was watching both. Like I was literally I would have tabs of both of them open at the same time on my
Yeah,
laptop.
because they always air at the same time,
Yep.
because MTV just loves to shoot themselves in the foot every year.
Mhm.
Uh,
But yeah, it was people fell off. But let's actually get into a little bit more of the season right now. About some of the other big storylines. The number three thing we have to talk about: Bananas and Wes coming together, finally aligning after all these years. Whenever Bananas and Wes run any season preceding, it was always the go-to storyline of when is Bananas going to take a shot at Wes? When is Wes going to take a shot at Bananas? And for once, they decided to align, and not only are they like aligning, they're doing confessionals like together, which I have to think at a certain point, like, how do people in the house not know the alliance is happening when they're literally being taken to take these confessionals together? But actually, you know what? So I know everyone knew the alliance was happening. They had to pretend like it wasn't.
yeah, there was a lot of acting going on, and they let little drips out. Like in the very first episode, there's a couple other confessionals of commenting on like, oh, banana, or because like Wes at the very first vote catches a stray from Asaf as the last vote after Asaf has been voted in, and Asaf just says someone else's name, and Wes gets extremely dramatic about getting the one vote from the person going in. It's very fun. And him and Bananas like hug afterwards or whatever. And there's a couple confessionals. All the first few episodes, everyone clearly knows. But yes, they also are kind of being told to act a little bit of like to question it, at least in confessionals. You can hear the questions being asked from the producers almost to like a Corey or a Nani to make them be like, can you guys just like be like, is this happening? Is it not happening, to help us tell the story versus we all know that it's clearly happening. And yeah, was that there's definitely a few people who have done joint confessionals before, like one-offs and stuff, but I think this was the first time it was like became a regular thing that these two were like every episode had a couple joint confessionals between them, I feel like.
Gosh, I'm trying to remember, and I really can't. I know there's been a lot more since that season,
Yeah,
but I
it's
can't.
pretty regular now, but even there's a few where it's like a couple or whatever, but it would be like a one time thing or whatever, versus like part of a storyline. But yeah, I this was another big takeaway on the rewatch with the hindsight now of the fact that Bananas, especially and Wes for the most part, have continued on. And I'll even rope in a CT and an Anissa and a Nani into this of like looking back on this season and remembering when it still felt totally okay that they were here and they were just they were the older group still hanging on. Like it was Bananas' 20th season. Oh my God, I can't believe he's done a 20th season. And that it didn't feel as like stale and tired as we're recording this on the day after the premiere of season 41. And, it's like, yeah, geez, it's like pretty stale and tired now when we see this group like still going on season 25 or 26 or whatever. And it both hits a little different and I kind of, as they show little highlights of their whole back and forth, all the different clips they show, mostly from Rivals 2 and 1, but throughout their time together, some Ruins ones in there. It kind of dawned on me like I am actually impressed they waited this long to work together. Like it actually, in hindsight, is like they did however many of those 20 seasons Bananas was on, a lot of them West was on, and I'm kind of impressed given how strategic they are and how much they both get targeted for the most part throughout their challenge careers, that it did take this long. And it kind of, in the moment, I think it hit pretty hard. And I definitely on rewatch was like, oh, this still like kind of feels like a big deal. They make it out to be a really big deal. And it does feel like it lives up to like, this is a really big deal.
Yeah, and so some context as well is that going into season 35, Bananas had not made a final in 6 seasons, I believe. I think he even
Correct.
says that number,
He says it a
which
lot throughout the season.
and that's a big deal. I mean, it's a signaling point that Bananas knows that he's no longer at the peak of his powers. So he's going to his now last resort of like, hey Wes, I just cannot he's like, I cannot deal with you right now. Let's try and help each other. Wes was coming off an early exit on War of the Worlds 2, and then a War of the Worlds 1 season where he did get Bananas out, and probably is one of his best seasons ever, if not maybe even his best. Not his
Yeah.
best, but it's one of his best
Mm.
for sure, at least. Um,
If you can say that you don't have to win for it to be your best one, it has an argument as his best season for sure. It's in the
yeah,
running.
I'd top
Yeah.
three at the very least.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and Wes has also just become, I think, a better and more different player. But Wes is also like looking for every angle he can to win. And so aligning with Johnny, he'll try it out. Um, as you're saying, it was a very momentous thing. When I watched it in the moment, I thought they were so corny and rehearsed together. And then upon rewatch, they were so corny and rehearsed together. Like I still thought that. But it is still historic. It is still, seeing the two enemies just finally working together.
Do you think, not to sidebar us too much, but it had me thinking, are they the best rivalry in challenge history? And interestingly enough, we're on all three seasons of Rivals, and they weren't both on Vendettas, but were never paired together as rivals, but might have a case as the best rivalry in challenge history.
Oh.
Or is it only because they were never paired together on Rivals, so this friendship never happened earlier?
So
Because it would be hard to say that now today in context of like they've been very good friends off the show for now, 5 years since this and do all this stuff together and everything else. But trying to remember back in the moment, I was like, it actually is, yeah, but it's partially because like other people have made up on their rival seasons or didn't have the longevity, weren't on as many seasons, but I kind of feel like they might be.
so when you're talking about rivalry, do you mean like show rivalry, or would you prefer something that's a little bit more like pure animosity and distaste?
Probably a good mix, a healthy mix. Define it as you will.
Because I did a blog once where I ranked Wes's top 10 rivals, and
Okay. And who was number one?
Kenny was number one.
Oh, yeah,
We
yeah,
saw
yeah, yeah.
Kenny. But then I believe I
Yeah.
had two or three was either Darrell or Derek. Because Wes
Interesting.
and Darrell have been at each other for like their entire time. There's never been a season where they were aligned, and Wes
Hmm.
has always taken shots at him. There's the fight between them. Fresh Meat 2. There's just so much history between them. Even on All Stars 3, he gets
Okay.
Darrell out there too. And then Derek, because they actually, I mean, they got really messy and dirty online there. In the early 2010s when Derek even restarted Challenge Mania, they were throwing barbs at each other on Twitter. They really did not like each other. So I always
Yeah,
thought like
okay.
my thing with Bananas and Wes has always been that Bananas took Kenny's spot. He took up his
Yeah.
storyline, and that's why the hatred never felt as genuine.
Mm,
But they are very good rivals. It is because watching them on X's too, it's like I'm watching like almost like watching Bird of Magic. Like we got some really good like them going toe to toe with each other, and I think skill set wise they are very even. That's what also makes them very fun to watch.
yeah. And it might also be a little bit of, yes, he did kind of take Kenny's spot, but there was moments from the very first seasons they were on together, which they were on all their early seasons together, that they also had their moments. And it's partly in my mind again because their real world seasons were back to back and came into the show as like Wes wanted to be the star of the challenge the moment he stepped foot there and was very much his first few seasons. And Bananas was the same as far as I want to be the star of this thing and I am not. And this other new guy is the new star, but Bananas by in my opinion, the greatest what if in challenge history and stroke of luck in challenge history, ended up being able to come back from the early season struggles. But yeah, that you make a good point. Yeah, there's just a lot of good rivalries is the thing, and there's a lot of different types of rivalries as well.
And then I'd also, for people who have been partners, out there in Cara and Jordan have had some of the best, like them going at each, like her throwing his stuff away on Dirty 30. I think War of the Worlds 2, which you love, is very crucially a Cara versus Jordan storyline
Yeah,
with,
for sure, for sure.
Holly and
Yeah,
Tori also co-starring in that as well.
for sure. Lots of great rivalries, but yeah, it did hit me that I couldn't believe they waited this long, and part of that was just the idea of like, oh yeah, and they also avoided ever being each other's rival on a rival season when they were on all three of them together, but then just rival teams on a rival season, and it made the middle season the confusion of the fact that they end up going against each other in an elimination, both, yes, even more interesting and monumental in build up. At least we can discuss the actual elimination itself and like, did they give them the best game for this big of a moment? But it made it all the more confounding and confusing, and leads to all these questions of like, what was happening off the show, what deals were in place, et cetera, et cetera, because you can both, and I'm willing to take either side of this, make a good argument for how it happened and why they ended up going against each other in elimination. But it also, at first glance, is pretty confounding the situation they put themselves in when they willingly put themselves against each other in an elimination, what ended up only being halfway through, maybe 60% through the season.
Yeah, it was I think around episode 9 or 10 or so.
So more than that,
So
2/3 of the way through the season. Yeah, it was episode 10, the final countdown. There was five more eliminations after that. So three more guys eliminations after that. So
yeah, and they did
elimination
some
wise, two
double
thirds.
eliminations
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that elimination itself, because it is one of the worst eliminations, like in terms of design and challenge history, because they are punching a wall and looking for three random batteries that are like, let's say there are like 50 punchable holes, and they're looking for three batteries inside them, which means it is a total game of luck. Maybe you didn't punch the wall deep enough and you missed it, but like overall, you could punch your first three punches could find three batteries and you win the elimination. It just it was a total crapshoot, which probably is good for either player of just like, oh, this person, at least when you lose, like, oh, that person got lucky. Ashley and Dee had a similar elimination on the season as well. Just really poorly designed. Bananas gets the win. But I always look back at that elimination that if Wes wins it, he then has a clear path and is probably winning the season. It is a moment where you look at a moment like whoever was winning this elimination is winning the season because the other person's biggest final threat is now gone.
That I had that written down and was going to ask you, do you think if Wes wins this, he also wins the season? I think I mostly agree with you. I just the I yeah, because I think cardio wise, math wise, because the final really came down to a lot of altitude cardio, trudging through foot deep snow, and really, 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 in the case of Corey, who was the biggest threat to Bananas in the final, not being able to do a couple math equations near the end that really, really cost him. Um, so I think Wes probably wins too. Are the alliances though? Bananas had a much well, Wes had D though. I don't know. I'm a little
Because
torn on if he would have had the same path Bananas had post this elimination through the rest of the season to get to the final.
yeah, at that point in time, Wes would have had on the women's side, he would have had Dee, he would have had Bailey, he would have had Maddie.
Yeah, he had Bailey. That would have helped.
He
Yeah.
was on good terms with Maddie. He probably could have worked with Anissa. Him and Nani were rivals partners, and so they were allies too. So you look at that
Kyle
side of
would
the
have
house.
flipped instantly and been like, I'll be your best friend.
Same with Rogan too.
Yeah.
He's always, and then you also have people who were just trying to get their star at their skull still. So
Yeah.
I think it would have been like I look at that season and that is a moment where someone like okay, I think West technically came in like ninth place, but you could say the person who came in ninth place was one move away from winning. Was like literally like one thing different and they win the season.
Yeah.
Um,
Which to go back to then, so how they end up versus each other in the elimination, it is, 2/3 of the way through. The Red Skull twist that we will discuss at some point
you know
here
what?
is well in play. And Bananas nominates himself, as people had begun doing, was like, I want to go in, I want to get a skull. And then Wes, as the winner of the daily challenge, it has the opportunity to also throw himself in. They discuss it. And they kind of are both like, this was supposed to be the time I get to get mine. And Wes ultimately decides to go against him. And it seems so confusing, but I ended up, the more I thought about it, coming to this conclusion. This is what I think happened. I think because they were working together for the first time, and we obviously know these two individuals, and I say this with no disrespect, full respect, they need this in the game, have very large egos and very large egos in this game and what they think of themselves. And I think it was Banana's ego telling him, I can nominate myself. Wes will stand down. There's no way Wes is going to do this. My ego will win this out. I'm Johnny Bananas. This is my moment. And then Wes's ego responded with, no, this is my moment. And I can now take out Bananas. We've worked together. I can be the one who I can, if I beat him, change my tune and, stab him in the back, quote unquote, have this big, huge moment and have my main threat out of the game. And this can be gold as far as TV is considered. And both of them just like talk themselves into like, this is going to be this amazing moment and I'm going to come out on top and my ego is going to win and I'm going to be the new star of the season and ride into the sunset. And I think that's what happened. I don't think there was any deals. I don't think there was any, I actually secretly need to go home because of this, that, or the other reason. I think it was just each of their egos thinking the other one would stand down and both of them being like, no, I can't, this can't be that, how this ends.
I also think there's a sneaky factor too of these men at this point in their career are not good at eliminations. Because if you look at Wes's history in those recent seasons, like he got outworked by Dario, he got outworked by Bear, like physically in eliminations.
Mhm. He
Bananas
would
is
in
an
the next
opponent.
season get outworked by Devin.
Yeah, exactly. Like physically, like it because Wes is the elimination king and stuff like that. If it's very physical, he's just not that type of athlete anymore. He hasn't been
Mhm.
for a long time. He's much more built for a final these days, but in terms of like the raw speed and athleticism and stuff like that, Wes isn't good at that. Bananas is an enemy he knows. Like they're both older. He's like, all right, at the very least, I can at least keep up with Johnny. And Johnny's also lost a lot of eliminations just because
Yeah.
Johnny's a bit 50-50 at eliminations. And I think that's actually like, well, Johnny also doesn't ever face bad players in eliminations, I think either. That's a
Yeah.
factor as well.
But yeah, they definitely saw each other as I know what I'm getting in for, and we're pretty equivalent as far as what we're good at, bad at, how we match up size wise, whatever it ends up being. It's a toss up here. And again, the ego part of like, if it's a toss up, I'll win and it'll be awesome and I'll be the star of the season and everything else.
They would rather lose this way to each other than like, oh no, I got Nelson and his balls in, and Nelson is just gonna like he's a little ball of steel. He's gonna mess me up. He's like 10 years younger than I am. Actually, probably isn't that much younger than them, but
Maybe, but yes, and they had just come off throwing in Jordan and versus Fessy and knowing and literally being the ones who did the. There's a lot of big dudes here who could mess us up in the wrong situation, and we don't want to end up in one of those situations. And
yeah.
yes, I think they also their egos also both told them if we do lose, it'll still be a really cool moment, and I'll be a part of a cool moment versus a ending up on the wrong side of a pole wrestler or a hall brawl with one of these people I don't want to.
Overall, though, like let's just say, I'm happy that they reunited. I or they did not reunite, they united because it was a storyline for the season. It was something different. I mean, because if it had just been Bananas versus West again, and they're past their prime, it's not as interesting.
Yeah.
We've also seen them be friendly slash allied in the season since. Like they were on good terms on world championships,
They're
and
best buddies now in real life. Like
yeah,
they hang out all the time. They're super tight. Yeah, which makes sense because they're two of the handful of people who have done this show for their entire adult lives and there's only so many people you can share those even talk about that with, let alone have gone through the experience with together and everything else. So makes total sense.
now at this point though, I would like them to turn on each other again, but.
If they're both going to be, yeah, if they're going to keep doing seasons, or if West does come back at some point, which we'll see. But yes, it did add to again that fresh feeling of like looking back compared to now the subsequent 5 or 6 seasons or 7 or 8 seasons, honestly, with the USA's and the World Championships and everything else that they've been on, where it feels very stale and tried and true, and we've literally seen it 20 some odd times. This was like, okay, it's something new. They're still around, but it's something new and it's something fun. And it reinvigorated my interest level in two people who, again, were the OG people that I was following from day one, was a fan of from day one, was sometimes rooting for, sometimes rooting against, but always thrilled to have on my television from day one. And it renewed that. And so that's a big standout plus for the seasons for sure.
And considering there were a lot more casual fans, people retuning in, just the idea of like, whoa, Wes and Bananas working together? What is it? What's going on here?
Yeah. Or like I remember like giving something people who hadn't watched in a while could easily latch onto because they might have watched back, in the teens or the 20s, and like they know these characters and they know the history and the clips they can show of their fights and everything, or from seasons maybe they watched. So yeah, that definitely helped with the viewership and with the fans like reconnecting to the show, and even new people to the show had at least like would have known if they watched any reality TV, they probably knew those two's names going in of like, oh yeah, Bananas is like one of the big character, right? Or whatever. Like CT's one of the big characters, right? So that definitely helped it for sure.
We mentioned it before with the Wes and Banana stuff, but the fourth thing we really need to talk about is the Red Skull twist. After War of the Worlds 2, people were very upset that all of these players got to the final without seeing elimination. Did I personally care? No, because I think the point of the challenge is you're supposed to avoid elimination. Or, yeah, I think you shouldn't want to go into elimination if you don't have to.
Yes, this is definitely because of subsequent seasons. There's two versions of a bunch of people didn't go into elimination. Is it still politically and socially interesting maneuvering going on, or is it Vacation Alliance, like legit, just like one group, nothing changes, nothing interesting happens at all. And War of the Worlds 2 definitely had the first version of like it was still very interesting. There was a lot of drama involved in a bunch of people being safe the whole time, but also for it did show some folks who had either not watched some of the old, never was watching the older seasons of the challenge because it's like, no, like this is just what happens on a team season. Also, guys, like when it's just two big teams, it is also the history of the show is very few people out of those teams go into the eliminations. Each team ends up with two or three sacrificial lambs, if you will. And like this is par for the course. This wasn't anything strange, and it was also very interesting. But it did lead to this twist being needed with so many people returning from that season two. I think Rogan is the main one in this that says multiple times in confessionals, I feel like this was made for me. He takes it very personal. It literally, the whole time he talks about wanting to go into eliminations, wanting to like get that off his back, that was said about him and the cast from the season before. So it makes sense that they came up with this twist at this time.
Yeah, we need to make it clear. The Red Skull twist is as such. You have to win an elimination to be qualified to run TJ's final. Um, However, nobody in the game knows when the final elimination is going to happen. And so people assume at different points, including Wes and Bananas, after, there's already five or six people qualified to run the final, that when they win this skull, there's going to be maybe one or no more eliminations left, and then all these people are going to get purged out, which I think was a fair assumption.
Yeah, when you are sitting in that house and they announce this rule, which I do think in the moment was very fun, was an actual shocking twist as they entered the era of the show where there was way too convoluted, way too many twists that weren't even really twists that lasted for a week or two. I always liked and respected that this was kind of this shocking new rule, and it was straightforward, a very simple format rule that lasted from day one to the end. But yeah, if you're sitting in that house and this rule's announced, you definitely think, if you try to think through, especially the Bananas and Wesses of the world, the experienced ones, the producers would introduce this because they want the shock factor of at the end telling two or three people, you never got your skull, you got to go home. And obviously, by the end of the season, that doesn't happen. We get to the point where everyone has a skull and they still have an extra double elimination to do. But yeah, I would have been thinking the whole time, like, if they wouldn't do this and not like the best case version of this would be getting to purge a few of us at the end and have that moment and have that strategy of like, let's not let this person get a skull. That'll be fun. They're looking for that to happen. So, which definitely is something they learned, depending your how you feel about different variations of this twist in the future, learned or didn't learn from, but made adjustments to in the future.
And if you're West at this point in the game, it would have been you, Nelson, Rogan, and Fessy, which is four people, which is typically how many men there are in the final.
Yeah.
Be like, all right, it's going to be us four, we're in the final. That's a perfectly reasonable bet to make. And you're also living in a bunker, so you don't even know how much time has passed by, really.
Yeah,
Um,
these seasons are very long at this point, and definitely in that living situation. What if they had been there maybe 6, 7 weeks? Probably felt like this is the longest season we've ever done. It's got to be near the end. So yeah,
on the women's side, I think Dee had one, Jenny had one. Anissa had one at that point, and Casey had one. So he would have been 4-4.
Yeah.
We've been like,
Yeah.
this is the final, right here, right now. And if this had happened and they just cut off all these people, then I think we're looking at a really, really strong season where it's brutal. It's like, all right, you people are out. People are gonna complain online that it's not fair that they didn't get another shot. But overall, like the shock factor of seeing all those faces just eliminated right then and there, it would have been pretty epic.
And it definitely would have led to the next season that they ever introduce anything like this, whether they told him it was the exact same or not. If they had done that, if this would have been like ended 3 episodes earlier, three less eliminations on both sides, whatever, and a bunch of people cut, then the next season, day one, everyone is like clamoring, and it's not one volunteer at a time. Okay, your turn. Okay, your turn. It is no, 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 no. I am in the first elimination every single. I have to be in the first elimination. I have to be in the second one because there might only be four. There might only be four total. Um, so I can't quite tell yet from your comments. Do you like the skull twist, or were you pro in the moment? How do you feel about it now?
I think it's one of the worst twists they've ever done in show history, especially with how if they had just done what I said, I'm like, maybe it could have worked. Maybe it could have worked. We just have a 10, 11 episode season. Dee doesn't give herself enough time to get canceled. Like, my biggest issue with some of these challenge seasons is that they drag on.
Too long. Way too
Like it's
long.
these like season 40 was ridiculous. Like season 39 actually ended strong. Season 38, 37, 36 dragged on for way too long. And this season in particular, I think it's 16 episodes.
16 episodes plus a reunion plus another special, so 18 total. Most of them 90 minutes. A couple
Yeah.
weren't because again of the editing. And yeah, we were definitely full in the era of MTV needs programming. They need to fill the time clock, and the seasons were just way too long to hold people's interest, especially every single like week to week when you're talking about for 4 months at a time, 5 months at a time in the case of season 40. It's just way too long. I on the skull twist, I again in the moment I remember being like, this is fun. This is an actual like shocking thing. We're 35 seasons in. They've got to try some stuff. Whether it was executed perfectly or not, I was for the twist. I have once proposed now after we've seen the skull 3 or 4 times in total with different variations of it. Not that recently, probably over a year ago now, proposed changing it to a daily skull twist that
Mhm.
I think would work much better with you have to win a daily and last place in the daily still goes to elimination. And my whole idea was like, how can we get everyone to try their hardest every single daily and trying to figure that out and still use the skull twist. I don't know that I fully landed on like this is actually the producers should take my idea and run with it, but I do think the red skull twist. I actually think this version almost works as good as any of them. Maybe the next season with the gold skull and you can like take it. There's only so many, as you said, and like you can then take it from people. Maybe that worked a little better. But yeah, I respected the swing. I think it might have been a swing and miss, but I respected that they swung.
The issue for I think both those seasons though is that what we run into is that we hit a point in the game where people are just volunteering and people are just letting them go in
Yeah.
because they're not trying to actually stop people from getting stars because they would just rather not face elimination themselves. And I don't blame them because when you're in that point in the game, like I remember I was thinking about double agents and that season in
Hmm.
particular where I was like, okay, if you're Leroy and you're killing it with Casey, throw yourself into Hall Roll with Kyle because that way no one's taking your partner. You don't end up with Nani or Amber, which at the time, I didn't think
Hmm.
that Amber was gonna do well in the final. So I'm like, if you want your best shot, like throw yourself in there. You could beat Kyle. I definitely think you can. But there's no world where Leroy was gonna risk it like that.
Yeah, for sure. I, yeah. In this season, you referenced earlier, like the first, I think we've said multiple times, the first 5, 6, 7 even episodes, all the way up to the 10th episode where the Wes and Bananas moment, that's probably the last interesting deliberation and person throwing themselves in. Every one of them after it until the very last double elimination when everyone has skulls and it's a little tension around throwing in Jenny and Rogan. Up until that point, there's like a 5 episode run where it is just truly we know from the first minute of the episode it's a guy's day, Corey hasn't gone in yet. Swaggy hasn't gone in yet. One of them's going to volunteer. One of them's going to get picked because everyone's just kumbaya, like your turn, your turn, your turn. Everyone gets a turn. And it really does make episodes 11, 12, 13, 14 of the season kind of slow way, way down and get, especially in that 90 minutes, is like, damn, this is a long 90 minutes for a couple of these.
Yeah, and there's like 90 minutes and the main character is not even there. So we're just asking what
Yeah,
Josh's
the
opinion on
one the
things.
one drama and storyline that isn't just the game itself has been edited out, and the game itself is well, it's this week it's Corey and Swaggy, and next week it's Bailey and this person, and yeah, you just
Yeah.
know what's happening from the start.
Whew. This will transition us actually, because I think the next big thing we have to talk about for Total Madness is the J and CT elimination, where CT threw himself into an early elimination that season after winning the daily challenge. CT won the daily challenge, top finisher overall, threw himself in to face Jay Starrett, who had already won the first elimination of the season against Asaf, though Asaf is not a very good competitor. He can't do math. He can't do much stuff. Um, but Jay beats him. Then CT volunteers to take on Jay in elimination. Because CT is also convinced that no one is going to let him get a chance at a skull because they know he's such a big threat. So he's going to win a daily, get this win, and then probably coast to the final.
It's a mark in CT's favor as far as how well he reads the game and uses his experience that I think he is 100% correct that the moment this twist is announced, he reads exactly, even in the physical state CT is in on this season. This is one of the seasons where, he kind of goes a little back and forth with his fitness levels, and he reads it exactly right. I think he's spot on that these people are all scared of me, and they now have the ability to stop me from being in the final without me ever having to lose anything. And he sees a competitor he thinks is, probably one of the weaker ones and is a rookie. And while he doesn't know exactly what the game in front of him is, he sees just something that looks like, there's a pile of stuff, and whatever it is, I'm smart, I'm CT, I'm not going to get any other chances. I'm going to go in. So I actually do think it's like a point in his favor of how well he thinks the game and how quickly he responds to the game. And I think he makes the right call to go in, and he just flat out loses. He just flat out loses.
Yeah, okay, so a couple notes on that. I would say the first one is that that house in particular was not thinking that far ahead against CT. And so that's the only negative.
They
But
might not have been.
the next
Yes.
the next season, Cam and Leroy were, but no one in that house was thinking about
Mm,
CT in that way. I mean, the only person who would have was Wes, but him and Wes are like always allies because they're rivals too, and so Wes would rather be friends than have CT mad at him. That's
yeah.
he
Yeah.
just doesn't
Probably.
want CT mad at him.
Yeah.
Now, second thing is CT, I think, was able to decipher that it was a not so fast type elimination because he
Hmm.
did see the ropes and stuff like that. And he's like, well, I played this elimination against Darrell and I literally broke the elimination. So going against a rookie, this is gonna be an easy win.
Yeah, which I should say, not so fast is my favorite elimination in challenge history. I think it's the best challenge elimination that they've ever come up with. And so any variation of it, I am all for. And the other thing that needs to be said about this elimination, and then a question for you if you think CT, as I still think he does, this elimination should not have been Jay versus CT. This elimination should have been Bananas versus CT because this is the episode very early in the game. Ashley, Millionaire Mitchell, bless her, targets Bananas, gets the whole house pretty on board, including, of course, long time at this point already, long time stalwart anti Bananas, Nelson and Corey. And they have a vote. It's very contentious. Bananas is literally resorting to dictating who gets to vote when to try to get momentum back on his side in the vote. And it comes down to Corey Wharton, as it has so many times in his long history of being against Bananas, needing to beat Bananas, wanting to beat Bananas so bad. And he has the vote that can tie it back up with another vote left, and Bananas could go in instead of Jay. And Corey doesn't do it. He doesn't vote. He votes for Jay, and he lets Bananas slide. And this could have been Bananas. And I think if it is, I still think CT throws himself in for all the same reasons. It's a harder competitor, but I think he still throws himself in. And instead of Bananas versus Wes, I think we would have got Bananas versus CT. But
Wow.
Corey couldn't do it. This is
I
like one of
okay.
the first of like five times Corey can't pull the trigger on
That
bananas.
that was a smart move by Corey though, and I'll give Corey credit of like Corey played a great political game on Total Madness because he was coming off like his more recent seasons, early exit, early exit, early exit. Corey like he took on like the dad mantra and he played a great social game throughout it. I mean, the only real problems he ever had with that season was with Jenny.
Hmm.
And so Corey like I remember I in my blogs I was giving him credit because it's like look, he's not making the same mistakes over and over again because like he had such a good opportunity to coast, and he did. Like he literally just threw himself against a bad opponent in Swaggy, and was just
Hmm.
kind of operating in the margins. And he's like, look, there's gonna be stuff happening between other bigger forces that if I throw myself into this banana stuff, they could just pick me off real easy.
That's fair, but he does have a handful of these moments in his career, especially, and this is maybe the beginning of it, where yes, it is maybe in this instance it's probably the smart thing to do. Other instances it has not been the smart thing to do, and it's backfired on him to try to play, a little more politically, a little more safely. But I had not remembered that portion of the JCT elimination, that it was that
Yeah.
close and it came down to Corey's vote that saved it from being bananas. And
And Wes's
so
vote too
that
was a big part of that too, because like Wes's vote
that was the
swung some
moment,
favor
yeah,
as
that
well.
everyone finally had to like full on be like, you have to publicly do it. And Bananas is sitting next to you, basically begging you to make sure like that this is your moment. Are we doing this or are we not? And so yeah, it's Jay, and it's a great game. I love again every variation of Not So Fast, and I think this one was a very fun variation of it.
We're also bearing the lead a bit, is that Jay's win is one of the all-time upsets in elimination history. Like literally, I jumped out of my seat seeing Jay win. Like I could not believe it because I mean, some spoilers had trickled out at the time, like that Jay beat CT, but you always thought it would be like on some random luck factor, and it's like no, Jay just cleanly beat CT. And like as you said, like I Not So Fast is one of the best eliminations the challenge has ever done because it tests you like strategy wise, cardio wise, mentally. There's so many different angles. Like
It's a perfect combo.
it's a complete elimination. It's like you beat CT at what is probably the most pure challenge elimination. And that is something you could write on for your entire challenge career and make sure that everyone will love you forever because of it. And somehow Jay has completely turned that around. Like he turned that around. Like I couldn't believe it because I was watching that elimination. I was like, just like the way Kohada beat West on the ruins, and like Kohada's gonna be talked about forever and loved forever for that moment. I thought it was gonna be the same way for Jay, and he had that goodwill and then he tested it completely and then turned people on him on season 39. But still, one of the best moments of the pandemic, in my opinion.
For sure. And he had very the Kahada comp is like very good too. Of like he had that feel good, like just this like kind of lovable, affable underdog, but like an athlete just smaller. Like he's still like an athlete and stuff and everything else. And one of the big notes I like had about how he won was that like it was a mix of confidence but like just excitement that he was like, this is so cool that I get to like do this for CT. And so he like went into it with a much better mindset. And I have an interesting question though on the rewatch. I had always remembered that the way it ends, like it's a nail biter, it's right down to the end. The whole time you're thinking like CT had made all these crazy knots in the door at the start. He's never gonna get through that. And Jay used like the littlest chain to make his only knots, and CT's gonna rip that right apart. And at the very end, CT has his door like partway open, not all the way. And the rules very clearly said you have to have your door all the way open before you can go in. And Jay out of nowhere rips his and it goes all the way open. He hits himself in the face briefly, but recovers, runs in, presses it. And for all the folks, I am very anti the challenge, fixes anything, changes anything because of who's in it, whatever. I'm all the way on the like, they don't do any of that stuff. But, and this would be one of the silliest examples of them doing it, the door all the way open rule, when they announced that at the beginning, I'm like, oh, advantage CT. Because again, CT's a much bigger guy on this season. Jay's a little guy. If you only have to get that door open a little tiny bit, like
Yeah.
advantage Jay, he could slither in there. So when they say door has to be all the way open, I'm like, oh, that's CT's got this. There's no way. Like if Jay could have way less work to do, that's one thing. But then the fact that the door all the way open rule kind of was what cost CT at the end because he could only get it halfway open, and Jay out of nowhere gets the comeback win. I feel like that was what cost him, and it was supposed to be not supposed to. It wasn't purposeful, but like was the thing that was supposed to keep him from having a disadvantage ultimately cost him.
Yeah, and I remember during the elimination, people were like, "Oh, Jay's putting all these little tiny rocks around the door, and those little tiny rocks are just making little wedges the
Held it.
entire time
Yeah.
too." And he played it so well, he played it so smart, and those tiny little chains, man, like when you got big hands, you have gloves on, like you're trying to get through that little hole. It's like, it's tougher. It was
And it can get way tighter. And yeah.
Jay played it so well. And it was just one of the most exciting moments like I've had as a challenge fan in a long time because it was like, man, I watched CT get beat cleanly. Like it just I don't know if we're ever gonna have that ever again. Like it's just
And it definitely helps the season. I'm a big proponent of like with the eliminations every season, does the right person go home as far as benefiting the story and the overall season and everything? And this was one where CT, there wasn't a storyline for him this season. There was nothing that was going to be very interesting about him playing in the background and, if he made it to the final or whatever. And so it definitely boosted the season the most to have a new person make a name for themselves that people again at the time were really falling for and were like, this guy's awesome and we like this story. And to have CT lost be this huge moment versus CT beat a rookie, and 7 episodes later he lost, but he doesn't. There was no story in the interim, and so I think it was a really good thing for the season that really boosted again that first half of the season that we keep saying. The first half really really good, really really entertaining, lots of interesting fun stuff happening. This definitely squarely amongst it.
this also pushed CT to get back in shape a bit because he
Hmm.
that loss really did sting for him. We then see Jay unfortunately not make a long run in the season. I think that is one of those things that hurts it a bit because he got thrown
Yeah.
in yet again to elimination. He got wrapped up into the whole Rogan D storyline because he's also pitching during that original week to put him into elimination against Jay, but CT takes the opportunity for himself. Rogan finally gets the opportunity a couple weeks later. And this is another what if for me is that like it's a very small what if. Josh and Swaggy won that daily challenge. They could have thrown themselves in against Jay in what was very clearly a balls in elimination on the floor. And instead they give the shot to Rogan, who's been clamoring for it. But these two guys don't have red skulls. I mean, Swaggy's probably a foot taller than him. Josh is a foot taller and 80 pounds bigger than him. It would be no contest, even for Josh, who's as uncoordinated as he is.
And Josh, at least I'm confident, had been on the season before. I don't think he saw balls in his brief time on War of the Worlds. Or no, he would have. Did he see one on War of the Worlds too? Anyways, he would know the game. Like he knows the history of the show a little bit and everything. Maybe Swaggy has like no idea when he sees that and down there what it is or anything like that. But yeah, I definitely hold that against Josh of like, come on, dude. Like I know that would have been the thinking, early game thinking through the strategy, the skull that again we praise CT a little bit for, while saying the rest of the house maybe wasn't actually thinking far enough in advance for it to matter. But that is definitely a point in that favor of yeah, like Josh wasn't reading the game very well at all. They definitely should not have given Rogan that easy win, and it was a very very easy win and a very painful loss for Jay.
Yeah, Josh is just straight scared of going into elimination while constantly complaining about not being scared of going into elimination. It was one of the most annoying storylines going on because you could see he's clearly afraid of elimination, but it's like, oh, I need my school, I need my school. Oh, you're stopping me from getting my school. Like you had opportunities, guy. You're in a lot of tribunals. You have shots clearly, and you're just not taking them. Jay gets concussed by Rogan in their elimination. It actually led to people asking online, like, is the challenge too dangerous? And I just gotta say, fuck off.
Yeah.
I'm sorry he got concussed. I'm sorry that happened, but look, we gotta have our headbangers. We also gotta have our puzzles. We gotta have our cardio games. That's why we love Not So Fast because it tests everything. But like, dude, if you didn't want to get tackled like that, then just don't go in the challenge.
Yeah, and I completely 100% share that opinion while also when it comes not to balls in, there's ways to just like you can lose really badly, but like you shouldn't get ragdolled and concussed in that way.
Yeah.
Like, have a little better strategy going into the game. Hall Brawl is the only single one that I'm like, I am all for them continuing to have it. It's brutal, it's ridiculous that it's still allowed. And if there was ever a player that got in a horrible matchup and like if I walked in there and I had to do a Hall Brawl versus Fessy, Guess who's gonna really consider how bad it would be for TJ to call me a quitter? This guy. I would not hold it against someone if they ended up on the wrong side of a bad haul brawl and were like, I don't think this is a good idea to do this. So
Yeah.
that little caveat in for that specific game in a really lopsided matchup. But yeah, like it's what the show has to. If the show loses that, I mean, it's already lost so many other things. Like
Yeah.
we got to be able to strap some helmets on and go toe to toe.
And people are saying I'm talking too boldly. I never want to be on the challenge. I don't want to be. I'm getting my ass kicked. So like that, I'm saying that as a person who's like, no, 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 no. I want them to compete and go full out. But I'm never setting myself up. But I'm also not setting up these other people who aren't willing to do it either. Like I'm
Yeah,
speaking for all of us who
yeah,
shouldn't be on there.
certainly for sure.
I
And
shouldn't be
if
on there.
anyone that felt that way in the moment of seeing Jay get hurt, I hope they didn't keep watching the season for the very end eliminations that I'm sure we'll discuss here at some point too.
Yes. Move on from Jay to I think the natural transition of people who also want to get their skulls. Jordan and Tori and War of the Worlds 2
Oof.
was, I mean, if you had to mention, like we mentioned, like D would have been the female MVP of Total Madness. Bananas probably would have been it on the male side. War of the Worlds 2, Jordan and Tori were coming out of that season so hot. I mean, Tori won those eliminations against two elite competitors in Georgia and Jenny. She came so close to the win, but then got purged out.
She
And
won, in my opinion.
yeah,
I don't like when someone gets in the team setting like, oh, two of you don't get to win. The boat's right there. Like you lose. And I was like, oh, that's dumb. Like
yeah,
she
she
won. She
ran
won.
90% of the final like a champ. Like she just
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
really good in the daily challenges, was very much at the peak of her fitness. Jordan was coming off his third straight, I mean, literally three wins in a row. X's 2, 30-30, World Wars 2. If he had won this, he would have tied Darrell as the only people to win four seasons in a row. Um, I mean, it was there's. I remember like at this point in time, I was like, Jordan is very clearly the best guy on the show. I think he's like the best competitor here.
Hmm.
And Bananas, West, and CT are past their prime, and then after them, there's really no one else that can compete with him here.
Yeah.
That was my mindset going into the season. I thought they were the two favorites to win. This skull twist comes into the world, and even though these two had just battled elimination after elimination in World of Worlds 2, they get so paranoid by it. They get so paranoid by the idea of having to get the perfect elimination, despite having a season where they were taking down Theo and Jenny themselves.
Yeah, and it doesn't match their personality both from the season before, subsequent seasons, especially Jordan's personality. And I think Tori's too, to a little bit. I will just preface all of this. I'm a bit of a Tori apologist to some degree, and definitely huge fan of both of them. This season is definitely Jordan's worst look, non-real world category,
Because of the
both
haircut
in
or
his
because of
dress, his facial hair, and his personality, the trifecta, all three of them, his wardrobe, his facial hair, and how he acts in general, in particular, like when Tori is losing an elimination or in a lot of different ways. But yeah, they were the favorites coming in. Jordan had clearly defined himself as if I do enough of these, I'm gonna catch these OGs in everyone's opinions of who's the best and who's really good at this, and none of them could keep up with me anymore. And it just made no sense that, and it backfires complete. Obviously, it backfires 100% on Jordan, who ends up being thrown in to a pole wrestle versus Fessy, which is about as lopsided of a matchup as Jordan could ever possibly get in an elimination. There's very few that could be a lopsided matchup for him in an elimination. That's one of them.
yeah.
And
At
Tori, less so, but in a very a fascinating elimination, maybe the elimination of the season, in a season that had a lot of very memorable ones and very good and
mhm.
competitive ones, one of the most interesting.
Yeah, so let's talk about it in chronological order. So
Yeah.
Tori's elimination came first, and but before then, Tori is a mess where she's like, "Hey, can I face Jen Lee in elimination? Hey, can I get thrown into this elimination?" And they're just talking about what is the perfect outcome for Tori. She is failing in the daily challenge. She's also not doing well in the daily challenges on this season either, because like
No.
they're so paranoid, like, "Oh, Tori's got to win. Tori's got to win so she can throw herself in against the right person." She's not doing that. But then there's a daily challenge that Jordan and Nani win. And they're like, okay, Jenna's maybe checked out. They bring in Jenna into the tribunal. They vote Tori in because they think Jenna's gonna throw the elimination. Or at the very least, Tori can beat Jenna because at quite frankly, at that point in time in the house, Jenna's probably one of the weakest competitors there. Um,
Mhm.
and that's just more of a testament to the strength of the female cast of Total Madness. I think it's a very strong female cast physically.
Hmm.
The elimination, it's it's elimination we've kind of seen before, where you have to deconstruct something. Um, Essentially, you have to make the most total weight. Like they were breaking boxes via like throwing it into a crate, right? Like were they
Yeah,
cardboard
they're like
boxes or were they
they're
stone bricks?
bricks,
Yeah,
quote unquote. But yeah, they were like more cardboard than brick, and you had to carry them up to the top of a ramp, smash them against a grate so that whatever fell through the grate fell into your wheelbarrow below, and then you go take the wheelbarrow and roll it and push it into your up another ramp, annoyingly, and into your bucket and fill your bucket. And it was a huge bucket. This thing, I don't know what actual time, but I imagine this thing took like an hour plus to do.
yeah.
Like they were doing this forever,
It is
and
a it is a heavy cardio elimination.
mhm.
It's mostly cardio with a slight aspect of skill and strategy of how you're throwing the things into the grate. And what's funny too about this elimination is Jenna doesn't have a strategy. She's just tossed them into the grate, and that's what's working. And Tori, in just total meltdown fashion, like she's throwing her thing like not really that greatly into the grate, like not strongly, but then is getting caught up where she's trying to put these little pieces through the grate that aren't going to make any bit of difference. Like you want to take a whole big piece just another time again, and maybe the stuff will come through. But like Tori's just I don't know what she's doing. It's just she's completely in her own world, and Jordan is screaming at her the entire time, having his own meltdown. And Jenna, if Jenna can do anything, it's run up and down, and that's what she's good at. She has good fitness and cardio.
And I think a lot of this and the whole season had to do with Tori and Jordan maybe already being in a very weird place in their relationship, and definitely how he was acting. And then in the elimination, yeah, Jordan is completely and utterly, from the moment TJ blows the horn, he is just yelling, 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 yelling. And yes, a lot of the time he was correctly being like, Tori, you can't, it's a square rectangular thing. You can't throw it down on the flat side. You got to throw it like on one of the corners, whatever. So he like, some of the advice was good, but when you're yelling nonstop and maybe you're in a weird place in your relationship, I could see how mentally Tori was like, I would give anything for this to just stop over here, and I would just could just focus and do this, and I would probably win. And I could see it's very easy to see how the meltdown kind of happened, and yet it was still absolute nail biter at the end. And so even mid kind of melting down and doing it somewhat wrong a lot of the time, she still almost avoids the upset.
Yeah, it was close. I mean, Tori is just the outright better player than Jenna in every way.
Yeah,
I think Jenna is. I think she's a below
is
average player. I think she was really good for a very specific era of the challenge when the women were a bit weaker physically. Her height and her fitness were like gave her an edge. And then we saw with that invasion, and then later, especially at the War of the Worlds crop, we saw a bunch of women who were much more fit than Jenna, and then also could do puzzles and stuff. So like
mhm.
at that point in time, Jenna just had nothing in the game where she was ever going to be top five in anything.
Yeah, I think you're spot on that for her first few seasons, she was definitely above average. And then very quickly, the talent pool changed and she became below average, but with a few things, this one being one where it's like she still does a good amount of cardio, and there's no thought strategy that you need to have. You could get little marginal advantages, but if you don't have it, it's fine. Just run up and down, smash this shit, put it in the bucket, see if you can do it faster than her. And so she still, she got a good game for her. And this was at the point of the season where, again, she was, everyone thought she was checked out. She'd had the dramatic calls with Zach, who was reading her old DMs, or not DMs at the time, or yeah, DMs at the time. It wasn't that
Yeah.
long ago. Whatever it was threatening, telling her she has to quit or he's going to leave her. And had the very fun moment or like kind of triumphant moment of her when she walks in, and TJ has been filled in as he often is, and is kind of anticipating her quitting. And it says like, I hear you want to quit. And she's like, no, I'm good. I just like, if we need to get one of these skulls. So like, I'm going to either get a skull or go home, but I sure as shit ain't quitting. And TJ's like, hell yeah, respect. Like, let's do it. And then she pulls it off and gets the win. She isn't there a whole lot longer after that, but still gets this moment of triumph.
It's an absolute crazy moment, and I think it's probably the biggest accomplishment of her challenge career. In my opinion, in terms of
Especially
like,
the time of, again, beating Tori. after Tori has come off this awesome season where she's beat Jenny in a hall brawl in Georgia and everything else and basically won in my mind and whatever. And then to beat her in that moment is in, with the possibility of quitting and everything else. Yeah. I think it's got to be the highlight. I mean, she's made a couple finals, but like she, one of those finals was, or the maybe the only final she's made was because everyone purposely kept like the true layup here. Let's keep the layup for the final situation. So yeah, this has to be her top moment.
She's made a few, but it's the moment where she beat someone who was actually really good. And that's like,
Yeah,
as a Jenna
that
hater,
matters. Yeah,
as a Jenna hater, it's one of those moments where I'm like, ah, that was pretty good though. You beat Tori at Tori's peak too, like or around her
yeah,
peak. Like, probably
beginning of her peak
Tori's
for
peak
sure.
is
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
now, like, coming off of World of Worlds
yeah.
2. But we then move into Jordan, who then goes into elimination the next week. We talked a bit about for Weston Bananas, and them teaming up to me was them acknowledging they cannot keep
Jordan's
up with
better.
Jordan anymore.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, because
They've known
Jordan,
this for a while. I mean,
well,
his
I
dirty
don't.
30 performance is what it is. And I think they were all aware when he came, anytime, if he decided to come back and, they knew this guy's beyond our capabilities now.
I think they knew. I don't think they knew for a while. I think hubris kept them from knowing that until about, I think that War of the Worlds 2 season where they saw him like, literally beat Theo and Josh in these eliminations that were like, oh, he can take on the entire house and then do this. Like because they were waiting for the perfect exact moment to take a shot at Jordan because they could have done it even at earlier points in the game and they're
Hmm.
like, pole wrestle against Fessy. This is the moment.
Yeah.
This is what we're gonna set up right here, right now. And I think it's actually one of the most cutthroat and oh, not cutthroat. I think it's one of the most savage moves the show has ever seen because they saw the elimination and they still made the move. They didn't even throw him Nelson. They threw him Fessy.
And I respect both one, that they did it, and that Jordan pretty much co-signs it. Like there's I can't remember now, but he definitely makes a comment, and it's one of those where you can be like, he knew they were going to do it, so is it that interesting? The same way, like at the very end of the season in the final, there's a funny confessional from Fessy when Rogan throws himself in the elimination in the final. It's like, dude, you knew you were getting voted in. This doesn't really count as like sacrifice. But Jordan kind of like sees the situation and is like, I get it, guys. This is going to look pretty effed up for you guys to throw the guy with one hand into a pole wrestle versus the biggest dude in the house. It's okay. You can do it. Don't feel bad about it. Please do not like it would look way worse if you were like, we can't do that because whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's actually much worse. Throw me in. It's fine. You should do it. So I respect both sides being okay with it. And then I very much respect Jordan after, well, I didn't like totally know after, but after the loss, this moment or the immediate aftermath of this elimination that he loses very painfully, getting injured, is now a big part of production challenge lore. Because for those that watched the challenge Untold History, was that what the little 3-part documentary was called that they did a little while back?
Yeah.
They made a huge deal out of Jordan being the ultimate like professional behind the scenes, because in this moment he gets super hurt, very hurt, needs to like go get a lot of medical attention, but instead gets drugged up on all kinds of drugs and painkillers and things and sits in the interview chair for his confessionals for like hours and hours, where they tell all these stories in the Untold thing of like he has to like stop over and over because he's like crying and he's like kind of like losing it from all the drugs, but he's like, no, like I have to do this as part of it, whatever. And so they like it was like this big scene in the Untold doc that I was like, oh,
Wow.
like obviously he was super hurt, and you see in the confessionals he's spaced out. He's not fully 100% there. But it was an added thing watching it back with then the knowledge of all this story of like how big of a trooper he was like, all right, respect. Like there's ways to lose, and this is one of those ways where it's like this hurts you 0% as far as your abilities, what we think of you as a competitor, anything else, chalk it up to almost a good loss, if you will.
And from here, in an interesting turn of events, as we talked about, D got banned from the show, but also a lot of other people in the franchise got very quietly shelved, canceled in their own rights, where MTV took a step away from them. Jordan goes through a separation with Tori, but also maybe quietly gets put on the shelf because of some of his stuff resurfacing from the real world. Eventually, he does come back for All Stars 3 with Naya.
Hmm.
Has that happening. It's like it's a redemption recuperation tour. He has that in his season with Anissa. Both it was the total rehab tour for Jordan, and since then he then had one of the most entertaining mercenary performances on season 39, wins world championships, and wins season 40, and has very much cemented himself as, in my opinion, the greatest player in challenge history.
Yeah, for sure. It's
Competitor, yeah.
yeah. Uh yeah, it's hard to argue because, the show for the majority of it has been the physical based show that he would just dominate and is just clearly the best person that's ever done it. It's a little different. It's kind of you can create a kind of MVP type debate where how do you want to talk about the greatest ever and his
Yeah.
character, competitor, all that stuff. But yeah, as far as if you just we're gonna line people up at their best to do a final, to play a season, any format, any twist, whatever it is, Jordan's the first pick. He's the first pick, and if you pick Bananas or CT over him, you're lying to yourself. He's
Yeah.
the best.
I always love the post these days, like, oh, Jordan is a season away too from like catching up to C tier bananas. I was calling him, I was personally calling him to go after the third win. So he's just completely flew by them in my view. But yeah, then Tori also obviously comes back for double agents, has another embarrassing loss, then does better on Spy Lies and Allies, double agents, and has been on a billion seasons since then. Uh, they've moved on and done a bunch of shows. Uh, Now we must move on to our next topic, which is we kind of talked about Jenna already. The Holy Trinity. And this alliance was Kayla, Jenna, and Nani. Kayla and Jenna were best friends during the Invasion 3030 era. Then they went away for a bit, or Kayla went away for a bit. Nani was not on TV during that whole time, but she was friends with Jenna before Kayla debuted. And so when Nani came back, suddenly all three of them were on a season together and they're best friends, supposed to be aligned. Um, Theoretically, they are a interesting alliance because Jenna's come in second place before, Kayla's been the second place female before, Nani's been second place before. Three theoretically strong players aligned who would then have voting power. And instead, they're just a total mess.
Total hot mess in the best way for entertainment purposes for the most part. Definitely some decisions I think they would take back, but uh, this is a big part of one of the big positives for this season. Looking back at it, is the kind of the generations of the cast and being a really good mix of kind of like almost four generations within this cast and like a proper amount of like we got our rookies and prospects or what they were calling pros. This was peak when they were like we can't call them rookies, like that's not good either, like they're prospects guys, and like okay, we can go back to rookies, it's fine. But and then being some people on their like third, fourth, fifth season, some people on their eighth, ninth, tenth, and then the three or four super duper vets, what have you. And the Holy Trinity, finally, those three being on a season together. All three of them had individual storylines and drama and mess. All three of them together in unison against other people had drama and mess, and against each other had drama and mess at different points. We discussed Kayla's Nani. This was the last climax of Nani, the great cast member, before going into the joining Casey as the boring background players in the majority alliance that doesn't really do anything. And where did our beloved Nani go? Well, happy for her personally at that time of being a more calm person, but entertainment factor, Nani, this was the end of it. The famous noodles. I did bring my cup of noodles in case I needed to throw it at you today for this show, by the way. And then Kayla was one of the best new cast members. I was very high on Kayla as an amazing cast member from the moment she came in on Invasion through all the seasons. I always thought she provided a lot. And this season, she gets entangled with the absolute worst wrong person to get entangled with and have drama and mess with. And that is one Stephen Bear.
Yes, and so as you said, Kayla makes her debut on the challenge on Invasion, quickly rises up the ranks, and like when I was blogging during this point in time, I knew if I blogged about Kayla, it would get almost probably the second most amount of views of anyone other than Cara Maria on the female side. And that was because Kayla started a rivalry with
Against Jenna.
Cara.
Yeah.
And they
Blue
it
hair,
was
red hair, the whole thing.
it was a whole big thing. Kayla had ascended to stardom, then she gets kicked off Final Reckoning, doesn't do the next two seasons, or gets left off to cast the next two seasons because production goes in a different direction. Kayla loses so much star power during this time. She's also, throughout this entire period, she's in a relationship with a guy named Mikey P, who was very thirsty to get on the challenge. Honestly, kind of a loser of a guy. Like you, both guys she's dealing with in the situation are losers. Like so, Kayla ends up cheating on her longtime boyfriend, who's been established that everyone knows in the challenge world for years, like at least the challenge cast knows about. She cheats on him with Stephen Bear, who's just a child of a human being, and even that would be like that's the nicest thing I could say about him. Like that is the guy's a douche. He's just a total douche. But Kayla falls for his charm. Maybe she was also angling to get out of her relationship a bit. But yeah, she cheats on him. Her mind is not in the game whatsoever. Neither is Jenna's, as we talked about before. And so as an alliance, like they instead of like making waves and making moves against Jenny and Dee and Tori, these really strong competitors, they are instead just in so much interpersonal drama.
Yeah. And the, it's just so important though that they are there and they're having that drama because it makes me as watching it in the moment I definitely felt this way, rewatching it I really felt this way of it made me feel like the teens and the 20s of the challenge when there were all these little pockets of little groups, little friendships that would be really messy, but in a given season, if there was, 20 to 30 people, there would be a bunch of little 3 to 5 person groups that were super good friends that started the show together, what have you, versus the last handful of seasons where it becomes like kind of one big
Hmm.
homogenous friend group and whoever wants to attach themselves for game purposes for that given season or whatnot. So it always like again the cast of this was so well dispersed. I felt like and that they were a really good example of like this makes sense that the Holy Trinity they're all on at this point. Kayla's is probably what Kayla's fourth or fifth season. Jenna's like fifth or sixth. Nani's 10th or whatever by this point, but still felt like, yeah, this is like the new little group that we've been following for a little bit, and they're going to have their stories and everything. And then over here, there's it's only Ashley in this season of the Lavender Ladies, but there's also at the same
Yeah.
time in this era of the challenge, like there's also the Lavender Lady groups, and at different points, these two groups are against each other. So it added a lot to the season. Definitely all three of them the storylines could be a little bit of a bummer in the moment. Like the Jenna one wasn't exactly like fun to watch, like her and Zach Zoom calls about breaking up and reading texts and whatever else. And to the Bear and Kayla port, uh,
Well, the Baron
I
Kato part, upon rewatch, when you don't know stuff about
it's
Bear,
horrible.
it's
Yes,
entertaining, but it's entertaining to watch without. But when you know the other stuff, it makes it less
yeah,
entertaining on rewatch. It's a weird factor because like I'm watching it and they're queuing up like songs in the moment, and I'm like, oh, this is fun, and this is like an entertaining cheating skit. I mean, I literally wrote a blog of like the top 10 best affairs in challenge history when this episode happened. Like, and
yeah.
it was one of my favorite blogs I've ever written, and I was really inspired because I'm like, you know what? I was like, in the moment, I was like, that's a hot makeup that they're kind of having. Like, I was just kind of like, this is actually kind of funny on screen. But in
And it's
retrospect,
to your
yeah,
to like as a bigger point about total madness, like we obviously covered D thoroughly at the very beginning. This was also the moment, if for those who don't know what we're referencing, Stephen Bear is an actual criminal who did horrifying things to other cast members from the show and elsewhere. But in this moment of time when this is airing, he's on his third season and very similar to D, as gross and douchey as he is and stuff, he is entertaining and he has been a pretty main character on War of the Worlds 1 and War of the Worlds 2. And then coming into this season, he was making himself a very much a big character. And then because of outside criminal behavior, he no longer was on the show after this was his last season, right? I don't even,
yeah,
if we see him
yeah,
on
it
one more
was,
yet. And so the show as a whole, this is that inflection point where like cast wise, they had done such an amazing job with the UK invasion on Dirty 30 and Vendettas and Final Reckoning, and then War of the Worlds with some more UK people, but some other people from all over the place. And like they'd really hit it and they'd really had a lot of success. But then Some for casting, like, why did you not call these people back? But other ones, like a Bear or a D, other reasons, just out of nowhere, it was like this new crop of people is just gone. And suddenly there's this big vacuum of like the newest generation is suddenly just the Big Brother folks.
Real unfortunate, but also like don't record people, don't
Yeah.
have sex with
Yeah.
people, record it and sell it without
Don't be a
consent.
criminal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't be a
Yeah.
criminal. And then he's since gotten out of jail. I think married an 18-year-old. So
Sure.
yeah,
Sounds, I would believe that. I don't, yeah, if that's the headline, I believe that. So sure.
this Holy Trinity stuff, it's one of those things too, where the second after Bear goes out, Kayla then basically throws herself into elimination and gives up. And Jenna, who we talked about earlier, she literally does that again because she gets a cardio-based elimination against Anissa, and she loses to Anissa in a cardio elimination after she's already beaten Tori. So that's I think the
Yeah.
most frustrating part because I would say that like I would say Jenna, Nani, and Kayla were all very entertaining on the season, but just the way that two of them in particular just quit the season midway in what could have
Yeah.
been like very entertaining and pivotal eliminations. Like Nani was in power those weeks, so they could have swung big and taken out some power players. It's frustrating. It gets a little frustrating, but as a whole, the Holy Trinity was entertaining, but just didn't live up to their potential.
Yeah. And they, like a lot of the season, fizzled out half to two-thirds of the way through, where the first five, six episodes, a lot of promise. They're definitely doing their part to make it a very good season, very entertaining, and then just nosedive. But shout out Nani's Noodles.
Shout out Nice
Nani's
News.
Noodles is a very, very, very memorable moment. I feel like it is truly the last image of that version of Nani. Which who knows? Maybe that Nani's coming back on Challenge 41. Who knows?
Hopefully, hopefully.
We can only hope. Love
Uh,
Nani.
this transitions us into Big Brother now because we got to talk about them. Because we had already gotten Big Brother players like Natalie and Polly and Jose and Devon, but in this season we had an influx with four new Big Brother rookies in Casey, Fessy, Bailey, and Swaggy C, on top of Josh already being there. And they were really strong additions to the show, at least competitively. Swaggy and Bailey as a couple was like very fascinating because one, they're already married, but two, they're really tall and athletic. Like Swaggy, who, I mean, he's 6'4" and he's actually pretty good at puzzles and math. And Bailey's like 5'9" and a former college athlete. Like they were really like they weren't going to be pushed around really easily.
Yeah, you need a couple rookies, and especially if you're going to introduce rookies that are literally a couple, you need it to be a personality like Bailey, who from episode one makes it very clear no one, her and Swaggy are not taking shit from anyone. Especially, she's not going to let Swaggy take any shit from anyone, even more so than herself. The very that same the one where Bananas should have got thrown in and Corey doesn't vote for him that I mentioned earlier is where I believe it's Jay just mentions like there's three other rookie guys to vote for, and Bailey stops the whole proceedings. Like, did you said Swaggy's name? And Jay's like, I was just saying I said all of the other rookie men's names. I didn't say Swaggy in particular. And she's just like, okay, noted. But like the whole house knows from the start, this is the personality they're dealing with. It's a very, very good personality to have in the show. And those two have she has a very good run. His is a little, she dominates it for sure over him as having really any storylines, and then he loses in a pretty lackluster performance to Corey. But ultimately, I think they have a very good showing, and they're two people, especially Bailey more so, but they just get lumped together because they're still together and have an awesome, beautiful life together. She is one I feel like people clamored for, like, get her back, convince her to come back, give her enough money to come back. She was, proved to be a very good cast member, and they weren't getting either of those two to come back, and certainly not now, the life that they lead, but
Mhm.
was definitely a favorite rookie of a lot of people, I feel like.
Yeah, and they just carried themselves like they were champions, which I think was very interesting. Like not necessarily that they were the talent level, but they carried themselves like they thought they were someone, which is what you want to see in a rookie versus, these rookies who will just fall in line.
Hmm. For
Uh,
sure.
you also had Fessy and Casey on the season, and uh, Fessy's just, I think he's one of the best players, one of the best modern players in challenge history, at least competitive wise. A lot of people hate on Fessy. I'm
This
a
is a
bit of
very
a
important moment right now. I don't know that I know your opinions, and I don't 100% know if you know my very strong stance on Fessy.
Oh, what's your strong stance?
I am the leader, organizer, president of the Fessy fan club, specifically Fessy on the challenge. We don't condone or approve or whatever. Anything outside of the challenge is totally fine. Whatever, great. Looking forward to him on American Gladiator. That's going to be dope. But I think Fessy, starting with Total Madness, if we say Total Madness on is the modern, like the most modern version of the challenge, is the best male cast member to be added in that time frame. I think he's an amazing cast member. Even if people hate him, that's great. I think every single this is the only season he's actually a little boring on this season, and is why when he always says he's an introvert later, you can be like, if you actually look back, like you do realize he basically doesn't talk for this entire rookie season. But I love Fessy on the challenge. I agree he is fantastically good at almost everything the challenge asks of you, but is a really big, tall, muscular guy that for cardio in a final can be a little bit tricky. But yeah, I'm a big Fessy guy.
Only his first season, I think. Only his first season, his cardio is bad. Every other season since, his cardio has been pretty elite. And
It's good. I just mean on
I'm,
the mountain stuff. He can have
oh,
the Zach Nichols
no,
effect of
and
like, yeah, when you have that much muscle mass and you're asked to run at altitude,
yeah,
it affects you even more and can
he's
be a bit of an
also
issue.
he's also dropped like 30 pounds since this Total Madness season. Like he got much because he was still in football player build and now he's
Yeah.
slimmed down into challenge build. I think Fessy is like I've gotten a lot of hate for this. I think he's the best competitor to never win, at least on talent. And I think that there's like three different seasons where like if one thing goes differently, he probably wins. Or has been I think he's had some of the worst luck in show history, from
Hmm.
Casey's like leg snapping to getting very getting DQ'd for no reason on Spies, Lies, and Allies, which he probably would have either came in first or second on. Um, and
Yeah.
then the USA 2 final was a mess, like just a total mess. Like we're gonna talk about this season's final being a mess, but that one was
Yeah.
a whole
Even this season
miserable.
though, he could have won. He was in first and then just got beat. He got beat by all three other people past him on the very final portion of the run, but he took the lead going into the last sprint. But again, big tall guy at the top of a mountain in a foot deep snow is the one place where it's like, oh, this is gonna be a little easier for Bananas and Corey, whether you have the gas or not.
Yeah, this was Fessy's most boring season. He was still in a relationship with Haley Boucher from Big Brother, who is now married to Alex Caruso, two-time NBA champion. Um,
I didn't even know that.
oh
Whoa.
yeah, they both Texas A&M alum. Big Brother loves them
Yeah.
from Texas A&M.
I knew her name because of Caruso. I did not know Fessy and her. Wow. Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
Even more
Big Brother,
reason.
Fessy. Yeah,
My
okay,
guy.
yeah.
My guy.
Um, that's brutal though, because like Fessy's dream is to be a pro athlete and to see like your ex marry a two-time NBA
He
champion.
slam ball counts, and he was
Slam,
fantastic at it. And he's now an American Gladiator, hosted by Mike the Miz Mizanin. So challenge representation
yeah,
there,
no, definitely.
which might also mean we might get Big Fessy back very soon. I imagine for that show, they might request like, can you be as big as possible?
Yeah, can you get out an HGH cycle real fast?
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, the addition of Fessy was really good because as we mentioned before, there wasn't really anyone to challenge Jordan on this cast, and like you needed a good, strong young guy to be added. And so Fessy was a little X factor, especially near the end of the season. Then you also had Casey, who I think statistically, Casey is one of the greatest competitors in reality TV and challenge history. Uh, is there something missing there with the eye test? I think so, but like objectively, she's one of the best competitors this show's ever seen.
She is in this season was fascinating. I picked up on her first ever words, her first confessional in the first episode are I'm Casey. I won Big Brother 20. And when I get into this challenge house, I am going to keep my mouth shut and stay in the background. Like paraphrasing, but like literally says, I'm going to keep my mouth shut and be in the background. And I'm just like, you couldn't have explained your game better. That you win, but you stay silent and do it silently. But I will say, this is the one season she is has some interesting moments. She makes out with probably Nani in the bathroom at the bar a couple times. She's at least Nani is aggressively flirting with her at the bar a bunch of times. So by proxy, Casey is a part of like some interesting moments, some more personality, a borderline even drama, if you will. So it's like the only time I feel like we get like Casey A level competitor and at least average, personality on the show. And then after this, it is A level competitor. I am going to do everything in my power to not be on the show other than when I'm winning things.
I hate her. I hate Casey so
It's
much
it's it
because
re- it's it hurts the show so much.
she's also like a really good political player too, but we don't really get to see any of it because she just stays behind the scenes. But she's controlling. Like we then watch Double Agents, and she's running most of the game alongside Cam and Leroy, but she's just not really saying anything. She has her Big Brother alliance. Same goes for season 37 and so on. Like doesn't even see elimination on these
Yeah.
seasons
Because
unless
she's
it's too.
smart and people like her, so she's like can make friends. And in most of the seasons, they're either the women or the men, or want to root for the best of the best on the opposite side, depending on the format. And so she, being as clearly good on the physical side as she is, usually on a bunch of those seasons, has all the guys being like, well, it's the same thing as like how Rachel navigated season 40 of like when the format lines up, we want the best around, and so the best on the other side protect each other. So she's all smart. It's in and be purposeful. It's just really boring, and she doesn't care because she has a lot of money from winning these shows a few times and everything else. Nor should she care, and she gets invited back because of that. But this season, definitely looking back at it, is like we kind of had pretty high hopes for like overall people's opinions being a lot higher of Casey and Fessy and Josh and Big Brother as a whole. And oh, so quickly, one season later, we would all be chanting "Big Brother sucks" with Devin as he put his
Yeah,
butt cheeks against the wall.
100%. Let's move on to our next topic, which is Nelson. And Nelson had one of the most interesting challenge seasons ever on 35 because he was a staple from 29 to 32. They leave him off the cast for both 33 and 34, bring him back for Total Madness, and you could tell him getting left off the cast twice in a row really did sting him a bit because he comes on to 35 trying to make noise wherever he can, and that noise resulted in him being an asshole to a lot of the women on the cast and just being an absolute mess of a player.
Yeah, early and often, and completely unforced errors. Uh, that same deliberation that I've already mentioned multiple times now, but like somehow during the whole is Bananas going to get voted in or not, Nelson and Kayla just end up standing up yelling in each other's faces when they have nothing to do with anything that is going on. And he has three or four moments like that this season where it's like, Nelson, how did we get from 30 seconds ago to when you were no part of anything going on to you yelling at this woman who has no part in anything that's going on? Like, how did we even end up here? And then he has to go do the apology. I feel like we see those same couple beats from him three or four times this season.
And not only that, he's a disaster in the daily challenges. He gets a skull because he gets kind of blessed in the elimination he gets thrown into his pole wrestle, and it's a double, and so they give Jordan to Fessy and they give him Bear, and he just beats Bear very easily because
Mm-hmm.
his Bear's just not going to beat Nelson in a pole wrestle in any
No.
day of the week. And then he actually has a path to the final, but at the last minute, with Corey possibly going in to face Rogan, Nelson volunteers it's because he wants to give Corey, his best friend, and Corey's daughter the best chance to win. So he throws himself into elimination. He sacrifices himself. They go into a hall brawl of all eliminations, even though Rogan has about 30 pounds on him. Nelson puts up a hell of a fight in what is one of the most brutal hall brawls we've ever seen. And if you watch the hall brawl, there are moments where if Nelson just stopped trying to tackle Rogan and just ran forward, he probably could have won.
He should have won. He should have won. Um, we'll come back to that. Let's go to the start of this whole thing. So Nelson, on the Corey front, this was another thing that I started this entire podcast by saying that like I wasn't gonna like compare it to stuff after, and now I've just continually compared it to everything after. But the Corey I have kids things is very tired nowadays and literally gets like mocked and made fun of by everyone nowadays because two-thirds of the cast of a season of the challenge now has children running around and everything else. The Corey, like in this season, where he is one of, if not the only person there that has children, or has children or children on the way, actually did on rewatch like hit pretty hard. And I remember it like being like a real thing. He was like a fan favorite. He, had come up. We'd been 5, 6 seasons with him, had a really high approval rating. I feel like never was like really viewed as like you're probably not going to win, but like you're pretty good at this in spots. And that was definitely like a real storyline people were invested in. And then Nelson does, it comes down to there's I think four of them could end up in the final elimination. Bananas and Casey win. They argue over we bring Kyle or we bring Fessy into the tribunal to keep them safe and put them into the final. They bring Kyle and say they will guarantee Fessy's safe. So then it becomes Rogan, Corey, and Nelson are the three possible. Rogan gets volunteers, quote unquote, his first time of many of like we were going to put you in, but volunteers. And then it's Nelson and Corey, and we get to the elimination, and we find out Nelson has gone to Bananas and Kyle and said, if this is the situation, what it all but seems like it is, you're putting me in. Do not put Corey in. Nelson or Kyle and Bananas give very, especially for them, hats off to them for giving like really nice speeches and really laying it on thick of like, this is freaking cool. Like he came to us. We want to explain it. We want to make sure everyone knows like this is badass, especially now that we've walked in and seen Hall Brawl and he still looked over and like nodded to us. And he knows it's me or Corey versus Rogan and Hall Brawl, and it's gonna be me. And I remember crying, like full blown crying in real time watching. It was like this is emotional as hell. Like this is great. And I got teary eyed today watching it. I was like, this is freaking cool. There's so many best friends in Challenge House. That word gets thrown around so much, but these two actually like entered the game together and very much were like every season they were together. They were best friends outside the show. This was super duper cool. And now we can get back to yeah, he should have won. He should have won. He fell down once. The other time he didn't realize that he was 2/3 of the way to the bell
Yeah.
and just had to let go. He had it.
I mentioned before about how Jay like got all that goodwill from beating CT and then threw it away like a couple seasons later. Nelson within one season became the fill-in to a redeemed like martyr for his friend. Like it's one of the craziest in-season storylines you've ever seen.
Yeah. And yeah, it was huge. And then it would have been, I mean, it would have been so amazing. Well, we probably haven't talked enough about Rogan, but that's fine in my high opinions of him as a cast member. But like, it would have been so amazing for Nelson then to win in that moment, as amazing as it
Yeah.
was for him to lose and like really turn up the sacrifice part of it, which probably ultimately is a better storyline.
You know what
But
though? Him losing maybe actually hits better
it
in
does hit better because
for
then it is
his
phrased as you phrased it, like he sacrifices himself. They
yeah.
kind of knew whichever one of us goes down there right now that we know the game is the underdog here and is physically going to get the shit kicked out of them, win or lose. And they do. They mess each other up in this.
I do look back at that elimination though, and I think to myself, Corey would have beat Rogan. Like Corey, Corey would have actually like
I had
destroyed
that
Rogan
down.
in
Do you
this
think so?
elimination.
Because I also like
I would take Corey. I would well, current day Corey. I would take Corey against CT. Like I think Corey is one of the most built people because Corey was supposed to
a
be. He was a
very good football
collegiate
player.
and
Yeah.
defensive too. He was a defensive back because like Fessy, Zach, they're all receivers. They're all like catching passes. Corey's job was to hit people. Like Corey's job was to actually like lay out the hits. So he's so fast and he knows how to tackle. Like I think Corey might be like the fastest guy in challenge history. Oh, probably Theo. Actually, probably Theo because
Well, yeah, Theo probably had a full sprint at least
yeah.
at different points. But yeah, I thought I had that question like, does Corey beat Rogan? And I think he does. Rogan says he has a his background like in playing contact sports, but he doesn't say what. I think he maybe played rugby.
But like,
Um,
no offense to him, like his rugby is not like
yeah, it's not
yeah.
the form tackling and everything, although he does
He no
have pretty
Rogan
damn
is
good
good.
forms, and
He's
he
strong.
in the which is another question. Nelson is not one that I'm guessing had studied challenge history before, or would maybe strategically in the moment he or Corey giving him coaching advice from the top would think through. But the first collision they have in round one, they both get very low, and it's this one of the maybe the scariest non-Pauly and Theo now collisions where they both just head to head, necks bent down, like, oh, that if anyone who's against this being on the challenge, this is the clip you would show of like these two both could have snapped their necks here. But then the second time, Rogan gets so low, so like basically speared out on the 3 inches off the
Hmm.
ground. Where in my head, I'm just like, the only Hall Brawl I think is better. I think the best one ever is because of all the theatrics of it is Zach and CJ and Jasmine and Sam were obviously a part of it too. But in Zach hurdling CJ, and it's like even if Nelson or someone from up top could have like whispered that of like, hey dude, look how low he's trying to hit you. just jump. It was one of the tallest and
Yeah.
open air at the top hall brawls they'd had. So there was a lot of ways Nelson could have won this. They messed each other up. They were both in bad shape afterwards. I don't think Rogan had a shot in the final because I think he was nursing some real injuries from those collisions and his back and shoulders and everything else. But it was brutal. It was brutal to watch for sure.
You got this, you got the Jenna elimination, and then you got the J and CT elimination. And you're like, what's the best elimination this season? I between me it vacillates on what day it is. Because some days I do think it's the J and CT one, and then other days I think it's this one.
And this one is also coupled with it's a double elimination and Jenny and D is in it. And again, if Jenny or if D wouldn't have been edited out of the last few episodes, like this they were partners at times working together. They were then rivals and hated each other by the end. And Jenny absolutely smashes D out of the back of her side a season
Yeah.
after getting beat by Tori in a hall brawl. And so the combo of it, like, is if you put them together, maybe this is the best elimination episode of the season. But I
Yeah.
think CT and J's is the one that gets remembered the most for sure.
So let actually we'll piggyback onto that. Let's talk about our 10th factor, our 10th thing to end us off. We're talking about Jenny and Melissa. Jenny, as you mentioned, beats Dee in this elimination. She beat very much the second best female competitor on the show that season in elimination, which is pretty big towards resume. She won the most tribunals of any female in that season. She killed the opening mini final type challenge, and then she dominated the final. And you look at the Total Madness cast, and you got Jen Lee and Big T, and then every woman after that, I would say, is average to above average to very good. It is one of the strongest casts ever in terms of there is no weak link. Is it as strong as season 40? No. Is it as top heavy as World of Worlds 2? No, but in terms of there's just no fat on this cast really.
Yeah, everyone's. I'm maybe a touch lower on it than you because there's a lot of like kind of average or above average that are like good at specific things.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's the only weak links are Jen who goes home first. So as far as order goes, totally fine. It's basically not even there. And then Big T, respectfully, who I
Yeah.
love, yes, is a bit weak on the competition side. But and then like you got people like Maddie could be grouped into the group we talked about earlier. Another one that's like has a little good run on this show, and then she's gone for off
Yeah.
show purposes or whatever. So
Yeah.
actually, there's a third person in this cast that's like
But
that. I didn't even realize.
so what I'm essentially trying to ask you is how impressive was Jenny's win and is it kind of underrated?
Definitely underrated. More so, again, I think the season as a whole and her as a cast member and character, as I said earlier, is underrated because of the edits and everything else. But she, the final is not even close. Like they don't. I'm sure at first they were planning on putting people's total times up to like keep track of stuff during it, and at some point had to be like, well, this is going to be really dumb if we, even though we're going to reset, and at the end everyone's going to be close enough to make it interesting. We're not even going to put the times on the board because Jenny is destroying the women, and two of the women end up not even able to complete the final. But yeah, from if you're talking dailies and eliminations and finals, and not taking like the political social because that always makes it what's the most dominant season gets a little convoluted of like should you be in eliminations or not? Are you factoring in the political game or not? This is definitely way up there. There's a few others that I think like Rachel on Duel 2 is definitely one that gets thrown in for just like absolutely kicking everyone's ass and just clearly being the best female there by a mile. I honestly put Tori the season before this in pretty high standing as far as what she was able to do. But this is way up there and definitely underrated. And then the somewhat cruelty of season 40 being a co-champion is like yet another diminishment of like at no fault of her own diminishment of like Jenny is like really damn good, really really
Yeah.
really unbelievably good, and should be really high up your rankings of the best female competitors that there's been in the show's history. And so yeah, I have no problem calling this pretty underrated.
Yeah, I think I rated it fourth for individual wins all time, and people were really mad. Because I just didn't really. I thought it was really underrated, and I thought just the. I think anytime you can take out your top competition before the final, like your hands are on it, it really adds to your win.
And she
quite a
beat
bit.
Casey in the final, which is still like I know the other
Yeah,
two couldn't finish the final, or whatever. Like Casey is, as we said, incredibly good and like
yeah,
is very much in her prime right here in her rookie season. So it's not like she didn't have another good competitor once she was in the final.
yeah.
And she also did to the political social part, like she was pulling a lot of strings a lot of times. You said she was in a bunch of the tribunals. She wouldn't have even had to be in a lot of times too. There was a couple times that she, at the very, very end, because there was only so many people left, she basically got thrown into that elimination because,
Hmm.
we want to get you out. We like want to get you or D out is the competitive thing. So across the board, dominant all the way through.
Now, one of the competitors she was facing in that final, though, was Melissa, which is our little last added tagline of Melissa competed on this season and competed in the final, 4 months pregnant.
Was she the first of the run? She was the first, right? Because then we've had like four total
Yeah,
since then.
because Natalie
Her, Natalie
Anderson,
Anderson,
Amber Bazotra,
Casey on All Stars.
Casey on All Stars, and then I think even
I feel like there was
Bettina
one more.
after the season was like, I was
Yeah, yeah,
pregnant.
yeah. Yeah. So this was the start of a run that the show never should want to have ever had. Um, and probably the biggest one of all, I guess, well, Casey on All Stars is probably the biggest one because she actually was the only one that like realized and went home and it was devastating for Kahada and everything else. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was a weird way for this season to end. And Melissa was such an interesting character during this era too, and has always been such an interesting character to me of like just shy of like really good star level cast member, like a lot there, but like not quite all the way like breaking through to the upper echelon.
I got so wrapped up in the whole pregnancy thing at this point in time because she had just had the baby. It was like on social media, like there's her baby. Like Melissa and Vienna ran the final together. That I maybe call I might have named Melissa the MVP of that season because D was not allowed to be. Like in my blog,
Yeah.
I named because I was so wrapped up by that and I was just bored by the idea of giving Jenny the win. And in retrospect, I'm like, that's dumb. But also, it was kind
Yeah.
of cool that she did run the final pregnant, and it's one of those things where no
It's
matter
incredible.
no matter what we look at, like when Melissa's cast in a season in 10 years, you're like, oh, but you got to remember, she made it to a final while pregnant, so you can't ever count her out.
Yeah, for sure. And thank goodness she ended up DQing or quitting out of the final when she did,
Yeah.
because I already feel very strange that she did all of this while pregnant and how that was a little bit dangerous, but she would have been in line to then stand outside all night and, do the last climb and everything else. So, pretty incredible. And yeah, definitely, it'll always be one of the first sentences in her like challenge resume that again does have a lot of memorable moments. She always seems to provide something to a
Hmm.
season, just never seems to find her way into like the main storyline of a season, but is always a good plot part of every season she's been on.
Well, we now have to ask the question, was the challenge Total Madness a total failure?
I If you would have asked me this question right when the show aired afterwards, I would have said yes because I just in the moment couldn't get over they had this opportunity amongst this horrible thing that was going on across the globe and this cruel irony of it just backfiring in this like random way and then but now it's probably just painted too much by what's come after it but like the first half of this season, the first two thirds up to episode 10, the West Bananas episode is episode 10. Those 10 episodes are a, either above average or good season. Nowhere near a great season by any means, but are very much a good season, an entertaining season. I had way more fun rewatching it than I did watching the first episode of season 41. I'll tell you that right now. And so in the moment, yes, it failed because it had this weird opportunity, and I think it wasn't able to in any way capitalize on it. But it's underrated as a season overall. So that's my convoluted answer. What's yours?
I agree with you. It did not seize the potential of what it could have been as a runaway hit to where we're in a much better place now. However, I would say those first 9 episodes, I would even rate great. I thought they were great. And then the fall off was so hard. I'm going to give the season a C plus grade.
That's fair. I think I would be right at the same. I'm a very strict grader and very, very, they matter to me a lot. And I
Yeah.
like try to think through what others I've put. And I feel very certain it would be at the top of my C plus, right? Of all the ones I've rated a C plus, I think it would be at the top of it. But I think the seasons, if I'm remembering correctly, that I had at a B minus, I would pick those ones over this. So that feels appropriate.
And I will say, like, Giant Bananas getting his seventh title, which is something we haven't really talked about somehow throughout all of this. I mean, we talked about him winning, but like, Bananas getting his seventh ring was pretty big for a lot of casual fans who, like, a lot of people online are just invested in only Bananas. And so, him getting that seventh win, really big for his legacy, especially today, because if Giant Bananas had not won since the Rivals 3 era and we would still see him on all these seasons, nowadays, it would kind of feel really weird.
I mean, it already feels weird in a lot of ways, and I say that as a again, big time Bananas fan. It just feels weird. It feels stale. But it's more of a note on the franchise than him himself. Like, keep doing your thing. Like,
No, I
I wouldn't stop saying no if I'm him. Of absolutely not. I'll be the star forever, of course.
Bananas was my MVP of season 40 for on the male side.
Yeah, for sure. And he probably is again if D's not allowed. He's probably my vote for the MVP of this season. I guess it's between him and maybe Jenny and yeah, maybe
Mhm.
Melissa and Vienna, um, and maybe Rogan. Shout out again. We've done this for many hours now, but I never got off my like. I also think I'm really excited for Rogan to be back on season 41. It's one of the few things I'm excited for. But I think he's a great cast member. But yeah, Bananas winning was very important, especially now, even though we said earlier Jordan has now surpassed both him and CT, but it put Johnny back in front of that conversation. And even with CT winning some subsequent seasons, allowed Johnny to still hold the moniker in a lot of people's mind and certainly his own and be able to say, I'm the GOAT, I'm the Tom Brady, I have the same amount of rings as Tom Brady, all that good stuff. The picture, he sells two pictures this whole time in his merch, him stealing the money from Sarah and him with the seven rings. And that was something it was the one thing that was seized opportunity wise by the show. It worked out really well for the show that with so many older fans coming back or casual reality fans tuning in, that the one person they all probably knew of goes on to win was a helpful factor for sure.
I'm going to co-sign that. And it's been a great time talking about Total Madness. Probably more words than I ever expected to say about it. But this has been an enjoyable experience. I hope if anyone is still listening out there, you all had a great time. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify. Follow Jacob at the Challenge Historian on
All of the places. If
all
I'm
of the
there, it's
places.
under the challenge historian. I'm mainly just YouTube. I will get back on Instagram and Twitter. Actually, Twitter's at Jacob Hollabaugh. I don't even use the challenge historian one. So yeah, just search for it. You'll find it.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. Hopefully we'll come back with another one of these.
We'll try to be, I won't be as long winded. I'm used to talking by myself. So, it happens.
It's a fun time.